Welcome to All Politics So Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. We are here today to have a really good conversation. We've got a really great lineup for the first hour. We have the honor to have a really great conversation with attorney law professor Anthony Paul Farley, and with a legendary debate coach, none other than, and many people who are in the debate community know him very, very well, Daryl Birch. And that is going to be the 7 o'clock hour, where we're going to have an extensive conversation on how, quote, critical race theory is being banned in many states and what that means for the teaching of debate. This is going to be a really great discussion for this first hour because, in terms of debate, we teach about race. We teach about we have a lot of serious debates. So we're gonna go in depth in that. In the 7 o'clock hour, we're going to be joined with the vote, that what we have every month, where we have Reverend Conrad Tillard and other community activists who are going to be talking about the vote, right? Like the importance of voting, the importance of understanding a lot of the different community-based politics that are going on. And at 8, we're going to have the rundown with Zaid Muhammad talking about what happened last week and this week, and the state of hip hop with DJ Rhino. So we have a full episode tonight. Thank you so much for coming on, Professor Farley. Thank you so much for coming on, Daryl Birch. Daryl Birch and Anthony Farley are friends of mine. That Daryl Birch I've known for over 20 years, and for those of you who know me, I'm a high school debate coach in Newark. We try to establish, a program in Newark over many, many years. And Daryl Birch, in the last 5 years, Daryl Birch has been very, very instrumental in terms of the things that he taught in some of our most important successes. And a lot of that came with the training of Chris Randall. So Chris Randall is also here. He is that Baltimore Newark connection. Daryl Birch is his professor, mentor. One thing Chris Randall has always said is that everything that he has ever done in debate is due to Daryl Birch. So all that great evidence and the way that we tried to cut evidence in Newark now, a lot of that research, all of it, Chris Randall's it comes directly from Daryl Birch. So thank you for coming here. I will also give a Daryl Birch, Paul Farley connection. I believe that Professor Farley's incredible work that bridged, I think, that critical race theory with a lot of what came next, introducing that to the high school and college debate community. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was Daryl Birch. I believe that Anthony Farley was like the text that he had, the type of thinking that was quoted directly from him. Bringing that to debate was you. So thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm just going to, so thank you for being here. I just want to briefly introduce the topic that we're talking about to set the stage for this very good conversation that we're going to have. We know that in Florida, Arkansas, Idaho, and Oklahoma, they have actually passed laws to ban critical race theory. We know that it's being debated in Michigan, Texas, Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, South Dakota, Arizona, Kentucky, Utah, and New Hampshire. We also have all heard that what happened at University of North Carolina with the 1619 project, and how they lost out on having an incredible professor, and Howard beat them out with that. But all of this is in the same conversation, right? Why is there an attack? So tell me, Professor Farley, is there an attack on the teaching of race in the United States right now?
I think there's an attack on Black people, and there's an attack on Black people asserting, what, the philosopher Jacques Derrida once called the right to philosophy, the right to speak as one with authority, the right to comment on history. So the critics of Black people are, the critics of Blacks as people. The people who are critical when black people act as if they are human beings, are addressing it on the as if this is a battle over ideas. It isn't. They don't name a single idea that they have found in the work of any critical race theorist. They talk instead about the ways in which certain rigorous views of history or law or politics or economics make them feel about themselves and about the eternal nature of what they consider to be their birthright. That is the eternal right to be whites over black people. They never name a theory. There's nothing. They never name an argument. They never point to an assertion in their critique, because that would invite a debate. This thing isn't a debate. It's no more. It's just a kind of set of ululations from white people, sort of sounds of rage they make when there is something out there that they view as a challenge to their hegemony. And a black person with an idea who dares to speak as if he or she has the right to ideas is the most serious challenge to their hegemony that they can imagine. So that's what we have going on. We shouldn't fool ourselves about to imagine that we're in a debate about ideas.
Now, on that point, right? Like you're saying, this is not a debate about ideas. To alleviate some of the confusion about even what's being said, there's a term, critical race theory, right? And many people are using it, but I don't think people know what it is or the intellectual thought that they are inscribing into law as being banned. Could you give us an overview of what is the term, and what are some of the some of the authors? I know that you directly engaged with this back in the 90s.
Yes. So you'll find as many definitions of critical race theory as you'll find people who are described as critical race theorists. Maybe this is a kind of sum, I guess, of the word cloud that is out there as critical race theory. Race, and by race one means racism, matters. It has affected the path that the law has taken from the beginning, even before there was the United States of America, the beginning with the colonies to the present. Critical race theorists want to look at history, the history of the color line, critically. That is, not imagine it away in the way conventional histories imagine away the matter of color. So some critical race theorists might use parables to get you to think about things that you've been trained to not think about. When Thomas Jefferson penned the Declaration of Independence, he was writing it within hearing of shrieks and screams from the men and women he enslaved for life and tortured and killed in order to sort of produce the leisure that he spent, that he needed to have to think about independence and freedom and what that meant. So when we think about Thomas Jefferson's words, we're not thinking about them as he meant them, because he certainly never meant us to be included in this republic. We're not even thinking about Thomas Jefferson the man, because Thomas Jefferson the man actually owned slaves. We're not thinking about what ownership of slaves entails. We've been trained not to think about that. Or the thing that is worse than hopelessness, like when hopelessness is made generational because you are assured, as Black people were assured by Thomas Jefferson, that not only would they be slaves for life, but their children could not hold out hope for anything better, because they too would be slaves for life, and their children's children, and their children's children. So some critical race theorists might say things like that, get you to think of Thomas Jefferson and the framers differently, and get you to think about who we should imagine our patrimony coming from. Does it come from Jefferson, or does it come from the people he owned? Are we with those who fought for the 13 colonies, or are we with those who fought against slavery? Some critical race theorists might write in order to get people to examine the path of the law more clearly.
So it seems like what you're saying is that critical race theory essentially exists so that you can actually teach history, right? Because what you're talking about isn't about like, it seems like there seems a lot of history that was just left out. What critical race theorists did back in the 90s was getting us to rethink about how we thought about the law in order to find other legal solutions to stuff that hadn't worked before. Is that were they trying to, like, it seems like the critical race theorists of the 90s, they were all about talking about affirmative action, hate speech on campus, and other ways to address like problems that existed within the United States. Is that a fair characterization?
I think that's a fair characterization. There's also another element, though, and I think the right wing may have picked up on this though they haven't figured out how to name it, and they don't feel they need to bother to name it. Derek Bell, one of the founders, if you will, of critical race theory, wrote two important pieces. One was called "Serving Two Masters," in which he described his work as an NAACP lawyer as a failure. He said he and the other NAACP lawyers were working out their own ideals, that there was a thing they thought would happen if schools were integrated, and they weren't serving their clients' interests. Their clients only wanted better schools for their children. The lawyers wanted integrated schools for the American future. And Bell said he'd come to realize by '68 that he should have been just looking for better schools for the children, because the integration ideal he and some of the other lawyers were serving at the expense of the black parents who were their clients and the black children, the integration ideals they held weren't going to work. America was never going to be not racist.
And so Derek Bell was talking about the permanence of racism, and you're saying that is potentially what they're objecting to, or?
Well, the funny thing is they prove Bell's thesis each time they try to object to it. So another sort of thing that Derek Bell did in his first book, A Jeremiad, it begins with a quote from the Old Testament: "The harvest is past, the summer is ended, and we are not saved." It's a look back at the big civil rights victories, the Brown versus Board in 1954, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the Housing Rights Act of 1968. So win. All they were doing was winning, and yet the material distance between blacks and whites did not move. So Bell looks at the tricks embedded in the law to make it look like the law has some efficacy, while the law is eternally failing. That our civil rights apparatus is designed to make it look like something is being done and to not do anything.
And so that's where a lot of where your work comes in as well. I want to segue to Daryl Birch as well, because I wanted to do this. Now, you are a legendary debate coach. You are incredibly accomplished. You are known throughout the United States for the work that you've done, and over the years, over many years. What was your relationship to teaching and coaching critical race theory in the 90s. What did that mean? How were you introduced to Professor Farley's work?
Whoa, there's a lot of movement there, and like race probably came to me as a black coach in debate early off in my career. I started coaching at DuPont Manual High School, which is right across the street from the University of Louisville. And I decided that I needed to put a race angle in there to kind of give me a strategic advantage over my competitors because of what debate means. And it was much later than that when I moved to Baltimore and I was familiar with Beacon, a debate team in New York. And I found Anthony Farley's article, and I introduced it to the two debaters from Beacon and told them that they should make a more critical race lens towards the debate. And like blackness in debate has been for me like something that I've always kind of struggled with, and I feel that it's something that came about when I was debating in Kentucky. I debated in Kentucky all the way through high school, and we had like numerous tournaments in Kentucky. And debating in Kentucky was a racial experience. And I remember somebody wrote on my ballot, the nigger speaks so well. And that resonated with me. And ever since for then, I've been kind of waiting to bring out like race within debate, regardless of what the topic is. It starts with the United States federal government. Like the topic that we debate every year always deals with the United States federal government. And to me, that is a racialized depiction. And that's what led me to Farley's arguments years later.
And what were some of those? Can you give us a demonstration? Like, well, what were some of those arguments, and why were they important? Because I know that the stuff that you did, both when you were when you coached college debate at Louisville, when you were coaching in high school, when you were helping people out, kind of changed the way a lot of high school students actually look, not just at debate, but at the world. So do you remember what the argument was and why it was important?
One of the first arguments and that I did was Brown versus Board of Education, that we should overturn the Brown versus Board of Education. The debate topic was academic achievement, and I kind of felt that academic achievement was like altered for Black people because of the Brown decision and integrating them into what was white schools or predominantly white schools. And the idea of Blackness like sitting out in a white institution like was faltered and needed to be changed. And so like overturning the Brown versus Board of Education decision was huge. And you can imagine it wasn't at all popular. And that was kind of like my first realm of it. I was at DuPont Manual. That was my first kind of like realm at race-based debate. And it was all critical race theory. And we used to run it as like what we call as a negative argument when we would debate other affirmatives as a negative argument, like as a counterplan. And so we would say that instead of doing the plan, we would do the plan for everybody except for Black people. And we would say that doing it for Black people was bad because it integrated them into a white system.
And that was when you're looking at the actual history of Brown versus Board of Education. You look at the 10,000 teachers that were Black teachers that were fired all across the South, lost their jobs, and you basically integrated lots of Black kids into schools with white teachers who actually hated them. So when people hear it initially, they might be like, "Wow, what do you mean by that?" Like, "Wow, what do you mean integration bad?" But when you actually look at here's what happened, here are all the Black kids, here are all the Black teachers that got fired. Here are all the Black children now who are being taught by people who said things like, we don't want these kids in our school because they might be dating white girls, right? So you have like those are their instructors right now. And you're like that's we're not really thinking about that. So a lot of these are our thought experience. That's one of the arguments that we actually took with the transition between us being Chris Randall in terms of that in 2015, in terms of looking at the ways in which Black communities are lulled to sleep based on having a Black president, or thinking that they don't have to fight, but you need some type of like white supremacist controversy for people to unify. And we had Trump, and we had more Black unity in the last 4 years than we've had. So there are arguments that might even seem counterintuitive, but I know from personal experience and also looking at how the history deals with it, that these are intellectual debates that actually need to be had, right? Like they are helpful. I found them absolutely helpful. Chris Randall, do you want to add to this?
I'm a little heartbroken right now.
Why are you a little heartbroken, Chris Randall?
Because Daryl Birch has left out a critical story about my development, and I'm trying to keep. I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry because that's inappropriate. But I remember in 2004, when I was a high school junior, somebody showed up at a debate camp. I won't say who he was. I don't know if it was Jesus. I don't know. But it was wearing all white, had a platinum chain on. I don't know. And one of the things that deity talked about when it got to the front of the stage was from a 1997 article by this Harvard-trained lawyer called "The Black Body is a Fetish Object." And seems that Daryl Birch seemed to have swept this away. And I'm devastated by this. But
and of course, Professor Farley was the writer of that article.
Yeah. So I'm not gonna believe at that point, because that hurts my feelings too bad. I can't cope.
Okay, that's cool. We have the violins are going.
But one of the things I think that, and I'm glad I have these two here, is there's a real need, and I think that I wonder if I could talk to the 1997 Dr. Farley, Professor Farley. I would ask him, did you think you would be this right? Because one of the things that Professor Farley pointed out pretty poignantly, he called his address a friendly criticism of critical race theory, is that they didn't really understand why people were pushing back so hard. And that one of the things the critical race theorists were attempting to do was to ameliorate a condition that they seemingly didn't understand. That there was something inherent about Black people and something inherent about Black bodies that the world needed to destroy in order for it to be what it is. So in order to have a notion like freedom, you got to have something like a slave. In order to have a notion like democracy, you have to have people who can't participate. And so I think that critical thing that Farley was talking about how the Black body really functions in the U.S. imagination, and saying that was missing in critical race theory. I wonder if Dr. Farley really knew what he was doing in terms of that level of criticism. Because I think to say to attorneys that you can't resolve the law because the law is situated in a particular way against these people on purpose, and no matter what you do, it's going to get back to that place. And you don't understand the condition of what that body means to the people who are doing the oppressing. And I think that was to me, that's been the hardest thing as an adult to wrap my head around, is my coming of age moment is Trayvon Martin. And it's just like, you can't really wrap your head around why all of these things continue to happen. Right. So, I mean, to me, that's one of the more poignant moments.
And please, Professor Farley, can you answer that? But also, just for clarification, you're not I don't think you're a critical race. I could be wrong, but I don't think you characterize yourself as a critical race theorist. You actually criticized and critiqued critical race theory, right? You were like, it's too self. Like, they can't make solutions. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, he's an Afro-pessimist. I said what I said. You're on mute, Professor Farley. You're on mute.
So here's the thing. I have been, I guess, folded in with the critical race theorists. And I regard people who do critical race theory as people with whom I'm in conversation. And some of my work is included in anthologies of critical race theory. Like, if you read a book, Constitutional Analysis in a Nutshell, it describes 4 critical race theorists, and it's page on critical race theory, and I'm one of the 4. But you're right and really insightful, and I'm flattered that my work has meant so much to you and that you've attended to it so carefully. And I think each of you has elaborated on it in your own, super interesting ways. But my work isn't really critical race theory. It is, I do look at it as, to use your word, Jonathan, soft, in comparison comparing it with what I think needs to be done. So where Derek Bell is pessimistic, though, and where I've been also characterized as an Afro-pessimist, and Frank Wilderson, when he was on this program, said that he began doing Afro-pessimism after reading my work. I am optimistic about our ultimate and even immediate possibilities, because I think once people realize what needs to be done, the enormity of what needs to be done, and accept it, it becomes possible to do seemingly miraculous things. There's a line in Frantz Fanon's Wretched of the Earth where he describes the situation of the colonized subject, the native, when he or she counts his sticks or stones and compares them to his colonizers' helicopter gunships. When you do the math, it always looks like you're going to lose, and you have to work within the system that intends to oppress you forever. But there's something beyond math. There's something about faith in the future and a first step that produces a kind of genius, and did in those heady days of national independence movements in the Third World. So when you know this is what you have to do, because working within the system is going to leave you oppressed forever, in the way Derek Bell and critical race theorists describe, that gives you a certain kind of genius, because you're now looking at the system from the outside, simply as a problem and not as the universe.
Mm. And when you are, I know that there are theories that went well beyond like critical race, that Daryl Birch, that you were talking about too. Can you describe some of those? And we're joined by Zaid Muhammad. Let me just briefly introduce who Zaid Muhammad is. Zaid Muhammad is a legendary activist in New Jersey and New York. Their movements for change. He has been a part of anti-violence, instrumental in trying to change various local anti-violence laws, trying to deal with the ways in which police brutality is looked at, or policing is looked at, in terms of changing certain things at a local level. So thank you, Zaid, for joining us for this conversation. He's also our co-host, and he's here every week too. So he's not a guest.
Lucky to be able to get on. The computer's acting crazy. Are we getting feedback?
You're getting a lot. So
okay. Let me try to figure that out now.
All right, I'll bring you back in. So Daryl, what are some of the other theories that are essential or important for teaching in a high school and a college level, right? Like, we're talking about these laws that are saying that we can't, like, we go to certain states and teach some of the things we're teaching. We're now outlaws, right? Like, I'm talking about like Harvard-educated Professor Farley's ideas. They are now officially criminalized in a certain state. Now, black men or black people, in general, black men specifically, we're used to like all kinds of criminalization that happens. So we're gonna be. So what does it mean, Daryl, to be teaching these ideas? Why are they important? Why are we going to continue teaching them, although we'll be in contravening certain laws in certain states?
I mean, for the most part, I've always felt like kids want to identify themselves a certain type of way, and especially like bright kids, especially intelligent kids. And to force a kid to finally read a book, read an article, and when somebody like an Anthony Farley becomes like a hero to a kid like a Chris Randall, and they grow up to be like activists, and they grow up to be like advocates of race and what race means in a activity like high school debate. It's huge. It's huge. And like the number of scholars, like, and I think of Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle in Baltimore, like Davon Love and Adam Jackson and Deborah Murray, who's now married. I mean, it's just like watching them come up through high school and through college is just huge. Like Ignacio Evans, who now has a degree, who also came out of Baltimore, who's living in California now and like has a master's degree, is just like huge to me. And seeing like the different types of people that get involved in activism means a whole lot. Means a whole lot to me.
And I would say the same thing, or things that are very similar in terms of the connection between like debaters who become activists in Newark. That has happened, right? Like we've have debaters who are now activists for housing. We have activists in immigration law. We have people who are lobbying DC for multiple people who are doing things on dealing with different levels of immigration. We have the mayor at one point said that the reason why we had local control, like for a while in Newark, the state controlled the school system. And the mayor credited two former debaters, like they didn't debate for anymore. They actually quit debate to do actual activism, right? And they helped, and two of them helped organize a march of over 2,000 students that shut down a highway leading to the airport. And other types of activism taking over, the office of the state superintendent, to the point where the Republican governor gave in to all of the to those activist demands, and now we have local control. The Mayor Raz Baraka, the son of poet playwright Amiri Baraka, credited student activists. And some who were trained through debate, right? Like they had certain reading, whatever, for doing that. So in terms of just like the link between thinking critically and questioning, it really is why I got it. And I started teaching based on reading James Baldwin's A Talk to Teachers, where your job is to teach people how to think about the world differently, to understand, what is black or what is white for themselves, right? Like, and it seems like to some extent, they are at a very basic educational level attacking critical thinking, right? Attacking the way that we critically think about the world because they don't see a need to change it. So, Zaid, is your mic working yet? Again,
say mic check. How my sound? Still got that echo.
Yeah, if you have anything on in the background, any other type of anything like that, then definitely. Oh wait, I think I know. I think I have the reason why that might be a problem. Hold on a second and try speaking now.
Mic check 1 2. Mic check.
Perfect.
1 2.
All right.
Salute to you, brothers.
Hey, how are you? And thanks, Michael, our person who does technical stuff, is in the background, and he fixed that problem quite well. Thank you, Michael. So, what do you think about the conversation so far, Zaid? I mean, you've done lots of grassroots activism. You know me as a debate coach, and like we're outlaws now. It's me.
I've always been an outlaw.
Fair.
My question is very basic, and this is for you brothers' well-being, right? As we get pushed back in the arena of dialogue, the question is, how are y'all being treated? What price are y'all paying for daring to stand up as independent, advanced, mature Black intellectuals, daring to assert the right to do that?
Daryl or Anthony, two of you can start.
I'm gonna let Dr. Farley go first.
Oh, well, I'm going to limit a little bit of what I'm going to say for at least for the public part of it, that you do
And that's
pay.
understandable. I can understand that, Brother Farley.
Right. Look, you do pay a price, right? The you guys have read my work, and these are not things that folk necessarily want to hear. It's stuff that people need to hear, and it can sometimes work out for you to say the truth, at least for a while. But as James Baldwin, who always spoke the truth, said, there's the price to be paid for the ticket, right? Nothing's free, and stuff, often crazy and unpleasant stuff, will come your way. Now, the thing is, for everybody who loses their mind when reading your work, right? There are others who find themselves suddenly not feeling crazy.
Mm.
Right? There's a line in
Very
Sylvia.
Fernandez, little brother, very Fernandez. I'm hearing you.
Yep, thank you. There's a line in, and this will sound like Fanon too, but it's different. There's a line in Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar where she says, this is a white bourgeois girl, upper middle class, saying, I knew there was something wrong with me because I couldn't get the Rosenbergs out of my mind. The Jewish foreigners executed for allegedly giving the Soviets the secret of the H-bomb. She can't get it out of her mind, but she doesn't have any politics, so she just imagines she's crazy. But if she had some kind of political armor, then the mental hospital isn't the direction she would need to go. James Baldwin's Talk to Harlem Teachers, he's breaking down that letter to his nephew on the eve of the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. It's the thing he tells his nephew is the thing he tells the teachers they have to tell their students up in Harlem. That this world is arrayed against you. It was never meant for you to survive. It was never intended for you to be able to hold an idea in your head. Right? There's a line in the most famous line of philosophy, right? Plato's Socrates says that the unexamined life is not worth living. The kind of lives that we have been intended by this system to live are the kind of lives not worth living. And so our examination of that life, our viewing it within the light of our own reason, like our becoming philosophers, which critical race theory is a horror show to that, because we're supposed to have those lives not worth living. Looking at time, right? We're told we've made progress. The ticket to participating in polite conversation is to pretend we've made progress. We are to pretend that the movement from slavery to segregation to neo-segregation is something other than the progress of white over black slavery to white over black segregation to white over black neo-segregation. But white over black to white over black to white over black isn't progress. If slavery is death,
White over black.
right, it's white over black. And if slavery is death, as Orlando Patterson, the great historian, has pointed out, then what we have isn't progress as we move from slavery, white over black, to segregation, white over black, to neo-segregation, white over black. What we have from white over black to white over black to white over black is the motionless movement of death perfecting itself. Like, we are, like slaves, supposed to be things, not people, not truly alive, but just operated by those around us. And so critical race theory, I guess you could call it black people doing philosophy, is a horror show to them.
And I would even say, like, in the last thing that you said, you were like, black people doing philosophy, because really that's it, right? Like, it's not the category of critical race theory, which technically you are kind of on the edge of. Like, there's a whole lot of things that Daryl Burgess teaches that go way beyond that, right? Like, we're not talking about legal remedies to this stuff. We're talking about it's almost impossible to actually deal with it. So there are other things you might need to think about. So, like, there are so many different ways in which it is about, like, thinking that gets outlawed. I'm actually in a fortunate position, right? Because I teach in Newark, right? Newark, New Jersey. My mayor is Raz Baraka. My superintendent is Roger Leon, right? Like, these are two people who fully understand what education is and what it isn't and what it needs to be for the Black and brown kids that we have in our district, right? Like, they are very, very, very clear, right? Like, the mayor is the son of poet, playwright Amiri Baraka. So I am in a uniquely good position to be able to like teach without having to worry about like the level of content, like in terms of professionally undermined, right? Because there's enough support within the community for the stuff that I do and the stuff that I teach. It is actually one of the reasons why I chose to teach in Newark, right? Like to be real, there were a lot of offers I got to teach all over the country when deciding to teach, right? Like there are offers to go different places, but
my daughter going off to university at Edinburgh in Scotland this fall.
Oh, nice! She has
Go
to.
ahead, princess. Turn it up.
Nice. She absolutely has to look up Dr. Tommy Curry.
Well, she's spoken with Tommy Curry. So she's had a Zoom conference with him already, and he's graciously said that his home is her home for as long as she is there. So I'm going to be the old geezer person and tell her to make sure that she does show up at that doorstep.
Oh, that is excellent, because like, you know, just like you have lent yourself, and just to be clear, Professor Farley has helped our team very specifically with debate. He's actually visited our school in terms of conversations. Dr. Tommy Curry has deeply helped our team in debate. So I think that, like, you know, that I am, so when you're asking, I am in a very good position because I get to have an intellectual brain trust that is among the best that people can have access to, right? So I appreciate you, Dr. Farley, because when you just did that connection, I was like, oh my goodness, like it's amazing, right? It's amazing.
You know, it's great. They're not, you know, so tell them what you're studying.
English and French literature.
Okay. That's
so
very.
We're excited. I did try to convince her to go to the University of Virginia, like her old man, and be
alma mater.
But you know when someone's a real chip off the old block, they show you that defiance that you yourself have. So that didn't work out. I should have been more clever about that. Like I should have said, don't go to you.
You should have recommended go far away, across the sea.
Not
for it.
Exactly, not Virginia. You don't have what it takes for UVA. You need to go to Scotland. You're too soft for UVA. You can't do what your old man did.
Right. That would have been.
You're not smarter than me.
Right, but the good thing is you love your child, so
it is.
So
it is what it is. But when you were talking about the kids, and those were brilliant kids that I met, I was really, really amazed by them when I was down there. You guys have done a fantastic job, you know, really and truly with everybody. So, you know, keep up the good work. I thought I was surprised and, you know, tickled and just blown away. I think there was one young woman, I think I saw her. Yes, where she asked me questions. I thought like, oh, I don't even want to answer that question because it was so thoughtfully put that I already am suspecting that your answer, which you're being quiet about, is going to be much better than my own. And I want you to just work out your thing. And I've rarely had that. I've never had that running into high school students where I'm thinking, okay, you're on to something bigger than what I'm doing. I don't want to speak as one with authority and maybe accidentally put a cap on your thoughts. So I hope you guys stay in touch because that one was, I was incredibly impressed with her.
Well, I mean, to high school students all over the country, thanks to actually Daryl Birch and doing that introduction, right? Like to the high school and even college community, you're a rock star, right? Like that, like you, Frank Rolderson, right? Like Dr. Curry, right? Like there's so many different academics like throughout. Like there's so many right now, right? Like Sadia Hartman, right? Like there's so many different academics that are consistently used in high school debate, which is part of the reason why we're even doing this, having, the first of many conversations. We're going to have a lot of conversations. We're going to bring in different academics. We're going to bring in different debate coaches, because I think that this is a uniquely important topic, and that this is attacking Black educators and Black students at all levels. And
I want to say another thing. Besides this praise for all you guys working with high school kids, because what you've done, and it's great to be called an academic rock star, and that's fantastic, but what you've done is turn these high school kids, or help them to advance so far that I just look at them and think, wow, I wasn't anywhere near you guys in high school. This is fantastic. If my work helped you surpass anything I imagined when I was in high school, then this is great, right? But I think the attack on critical race theory needs to be looked at by us as an opportunity. It's a word in everybody's ear right now. So it's really critical race theory versus January 6th, 2021, and Donald Trump.
There you go.
And so that's our first argument. We shouldn't run from the term. We shouldn't apologize for it. I told a group of academics the other day who were worrying about this problem, I said, no, you know what? Whatever I was before, postmodernist, Bolshevik, displaced by a century, whatever you want to call it before, we're all critical race theorists now. If they're attacking this, then that's the banner under which all of us who want a better world need to gather, because the people with Trump are always going to be with Trump. They're soulless and can't change. We don't care about them. We care about the others many of whom were horrified by January 6th, 2021, and by the Trump terror campaign of the last 4 years. So we have a chance now to educate people.
Indeed. It's a teachable moment. You got a shout out, by the way, by a local radical professor by the name of Josie Gonzalez. I just want to make sure you got your shout out.
Oh, fantastic! Hey, so local means Newark. How you doing? Fantastic.
She's a rock star in her own right too.
All right. Well,
absolutely. She's been on our show before as well.
Right. Hey, I'm going to put this out in the public airways. I'm telling the people in Newark to bring me back.
Absolutely.
So whatever needs to be done, right? Like no limit.
I appreciate that sentiment. You were on loan from right now. You're teaching at Albany.
Yes.
But you were on loan to Newark when you came to visit us. You were located actually in Newark for that time.
Right. Exactly. I was the Honorable Peter Rodino Distinguished Visiting Professor at Newark. So that was
at Rutgers and at Rutgers Law School in Newark.
Yes, at Rutgers Law School. Yes.
What I think, Mr. Austin, what I think is the most important thing about it now that I think about, like, when you ask the price to be paid is, and I guess it's important that I say it now, like, the question becomes, do you want more, what kinds of adults do we want to produce, right? And so when Daryl Birch put those things in my hand, like when he put the Derek Bells and the Anthony Farley's and the Dr. Bob, when he put all of those things in my hand, I had a bandana on, I had a do-rag on, I was talking crazy, I had no sense. I was an outlaw in my own right. And the question becomes, what do we want to, it was never, as James Baldwin says, I was never meant to survive. I was set in a city where they thought I would die. It's a situation where, what are the tools of liberation people have at hand? And really what the attack on critical race theory is to make sure that there is never another Daryl Birch or Jonathan Austin or Zaid Muhammad, and that they have no tools to save a Chris Randall, right? And then I don't have any tools to save whoever, if I've been blessed to have an positive impact, I don't have any of those tools at my disposal as well. And so I think we need to understand that as a genocidal attack, at a people who are not meant to survive. And I think that we really need to think about it in the correct political terms. That it's not some academic argument that needs to be had, because it is a step toward perfecting slavery, as Dr. Farley put it, but also a genocidal move against people who who are defenseless and have been defenseless. And only defense we've ever had is the internal courage to dare to exist, which is what Black literature, Black writing, Black art, Black attorneys, Black teachers, Black, mentors and all of that that's all that ever's been. It's just been a performance of the audacity to survive. And I think that we have to think about it in those correct political terms, or there is no reason to have the conversation.
Right on, Chris. I mean, it certainly is repression.
And Daryl Birch, I don't think
about that too.
And Daryl Birch, I don't think that you answered the question. And your mic is on.
What was the question?
What is the price to be paid, right, for doing what you're doing, for teaching what you're teaching, and to talk about that particular issue, because that whenever you do things that are positive, you're always going to end up getting attacked, right? Like no matter what the position that you're in is. So I think that was leading toward that level of questioning.
To say like what it means to do what it is that I do, what it is that I've done, and what effects that has had on me as a professional, as a teacher, as an educator, as a thinker, as an intellectual, like somebody that can write, somebody that can construct an argument, somebody that can teach kids, and somebody whose parents would want them to be taught by somebody like me, says a lot. And I feel like I've gotten by with a lot. And I think I've done a lot as a debate coach, but I think I could probably still do a lot more. And but I think the risk to me is small compared to the risk that it is for the people that we have on the panel. And so like I'm thrilled that you asked me to be on here, and I feel like that the risks that I've taken and the things that I've done in my life were like a product of the environment that I was in, and not necessarily the choices that I made. And I think that the two other people here besides Chris, and I speak on behalf of Chris, but I don't mean to speak for Chris, but like the activists that we have on here and the professor that we have on here is to me just mind-boggling. And so, like when you say like the risks that I take and the things that I've done, I mean, I work for a private prep school, and McDonough has been great to me and has allowed me to make all the arguments that my teams have made, to have the first Black debater ever to win the national championship in high school debate and running Black arguments. And that's, to me, that says a lot. That says a lot. And that's something that I think that I've risked like little compared to some of the other people on the panel would have risked.
And that actually leads to a segue in terms of a question that I have for you, Daryl, and also for Chris. Like Chris, you and I teach at the Global Debate Symposium, where that's in the middle of going on right now. It's a high school debate institute that teaches predominantly, like white and kids from wealthy schools from across the country. Daryl, you're at McDonough, which is an elite prep school in Baltimore. Is this part of what the actual the other level to this issue is, and maybe a much more central part of the reason why people are hating critical race theory, or because we're teaching like suburban white kids from all over the country at various points. My kids who are competing in debate are competing against like Harvard Westlake or Glenbrooks or Bronx or they're competing against like schools that are predominantly white, right? Like I think it was on Bill Maher, there was a guest that they had that started railing against her kid coming home from Harvard Westlake and talking about overthrowing capitalism, right? Or the critique of capitalism. Do you think? What do you think about the other kids that we teach, right? Do you think that becomes part of why this is a problem? right now, why it's outlawed in Oklahoma and like in places where Black people don't want to go, right? Do you think that might be part of it?
I mean, that's a big part of it. I would love to hear what Mr. Muhammad has to say about this. And to me, because like we've never met, and I think it is a big problem. And I'll go after him, but I would love to hear what he has to say about this.
Oh, cool. Zaid, Daryl Birch, Zaid. These are two incredible friends and two incredible people. Your mic is off.
Cussing up a storm too. All right, now we asked the question so a layperson can answer.
Like, it is part of the issue, right? Is part of the problem that white kids are getting critical race theory. They're getting it when or they're getting debates about race that make white people uncomfortable, right? Like they're getting it when they go to the Global Debate Symposium where I teach, right? Like they're understanding it there, where you're teaching at Wake Forest, Daryl, and they get it there. You're teaching McDonough, they get it there, right? The kids that we debate against, they and in terms of the suburban schools and their elite prep schools, they have to debate against us, and then they start learning stuff, whether they are getting it from coming to places where we teach in the summer or because they are interacting with our students. So do you think that the big problem, the big reason why Oklahoma and South Dakota and all these places that Black people don't want to go are and I'm joking when I say that, but do you think that is part of the issue?
Well, sure. I mean, the most important point is this, is that whenever we have access to students, no matter their background, we have an obligation to give them the best that we can give them, to be critical thinkers and to come out, hopefully, in a place better with their thinking that is different from the backwardness that we've all had to ingest as a consequence of this racist paradigm, right? And if critical race theory is the tool to get at some folks to create some divisions within their ranks using Kwame Ture's language, then let it be. Wherever you can create divisions within their ranks, let it be. Teach your critical theory behinds off, right? And then make it as soulful and as humane as possible, because that's who we are, right? And we need not go negotiate that to back up for some racists. Our ancestors didn't put up with all this mess for us to be backing up.
And so I want to add to that, to John, because like Mr. Muhammad said a lot. And to me, that's what I live off of. And a lot of times I'm quiet, like in the school setting, because I have to be, and because the way that I normally think is not the way that I want to teach kids, and not want to have kids teach. But the way that I teach in debate is totally different. And even though those have similar, like, I guess, displays, like the debate team at McDonough has to the classroom at McDonough, I'm a totally different person in both different settings, if that makes sense.
So you're saying that like the way in which you teach at McDonough is different than the way you teach debate, like the high school class, the history class is different than the debate program.
Yes.
Famous debate coach Aaron Timmons described debate to me once as full contact social studies. Is that the way that is that what you're talking about and the way you approach it?
To a certain degree, yes, and to a certain degree, no. Like full contact to me is something that I think people have to like enter in and be accepting of. And I don't think they can have full contact if they're not accepting of it. And so like I would say that full contact social studies and debate is not necessarily like where I'm at. And most of the kids at McDonough that join the debate team that debate for me, and they debate like me, and they debate and they have like the same mindset that I have, and so it makes it easier. But that's not to say that all the kids will and all the kids do, and that's the way that I teach debate. And I keep it separate. But for me, like what you're saying in race, like has like tremendous like influence on the way in which we debate that goes beyond the classroom. Because to me is an extracurricular activity.
Okay.
You know,
Fair.
I wonder if I want to go back to sort of the situation we're in, right, with these bans on critical race theory, and as a kind of opportunity, right? When we're teaching these children, whether they're in the suburbs, whether they're in Newark, whether they're in law school, whether they're in high school, we have to remember that we're the ones in the 21st century. And what the people in the GOP consider mainstream America isn't. They're trapped in a tangle of 19th century pathologies of sexism, of racism, of xenophobia, of homophobia. They've added Islamophobia to the mix. Like they're classist, they're anti-environment, they're everything that the 19th century robber barons, the 19th century industrialists wanted people to distract themselves with, as they extracted wealth from their willing dupes. So they are stuck in the 19th century. We are the cosmopolitan 21st century part of America. And we are the part of America that the world admires, not them. The world was horrified when our white American subpopulation got what its majority wanted, Donald Trump. Because the world isn't that way. Donald Trump was a popular leader in no nation, no civilized democratic nation in the world, right? Because that way of thinking gathers only kind of the people that time forgot. Right, people that are isolated in their pathologies, to whom no one is willingly listening. We, on the other hand, want to create an America that might look like Iceland or Sweden or Norway or Denmark or Finland. We are advocates for a modern social welfare state, cosmopolitan and hyper-democratic at least. And many of us, the radicals among us, are advocates for more than that. So I think we have to really realize who's isolated and who's not.
Mm-hmm. So really what you're saying is that when we are having these conversations, we are having conversations about the future.
We are absolutely having conversations about the future. They think it belongs to them. They are wrong. They are isolated. The world isn't with them. The world is with us. They're not even a majority here. When we think about white dissidents plus people of color, we outnumber them. The Trump and his white supremacist GOP do command a majority of one particular and very peculiar subpopulation, America's whites. But the world isn't like them. Whites around the world aren't like them. The whites who vote for Trump here are an anomaly. Their thoughts don't make sense in the 21st century to anyone outside of their particular camp. They're outnumbered here, and the rest of the world is with us. So the devil wins by tricking you into thinking you're less powerful than you are. Like it may not seem so always, but we're the ones in the driver's seat.
Exactly right.
So and this is just a question, just in terms of like in terms of your intellectual thoughts. That are you saying that we, to some extent, are demographing our way out of these types of white supremacy? Like they are like is that I'm asking because I don't know. Are you like they're gonna die off? No.
I don't want to be mistaken. The numbers don't mean anything. During apartheid South Africa, the blacks had the numbers. Numbers don't mean anything. What I'm saying though is that we should recognize that we have a certain kind of power, right? That is, the world is in agreement with us. To the extent we can expose their foolish thinking, they're viewed as unreliable everywhere on Earth. Their ideas don't cohere. They can't withstand even proper histories, right? They go into hysterics over critical race theory because if you just say America had slavery, things everyone understands to be true, they lose their minds. Right? James Baldwin talked about the vulnerability and weakness of white America because alone among people within this American project, they were the ones that didn't realize they didn't want to be here. Like Black people understand why we're here. White Americans typically dream up some fantasy of principles and powers that they were in charge of in Europe before they came here. And they don't really think about the indentured servitudes that brought them to these shores. They walk around with a fake identity, white, to cover up an identity from the past that scares them too much to remember. Like James Baldwin said that the creation of the N-word was necessary because the whites who came here didn't want to think about the past and the horrors that they had in them that they then projected upon us as a way of escaping any sort of self-reflection. Baldwin said, people who walk around in a dream like that get into trouble. And if they're in command of institutions, they get the world into trouble. So I don't think the world wants that trouble. I don't think the world wants an unstable America. I don't think the world wants a 19th century America. And we represent 21st century cosmopolitan, hyper-democratic America. We being people of color plus white dissidents.
Interesting.
So I want to say something, Jonathan. Like,
yes.
I don't know if Dr. Farley can see what I'm writing in the chat. Can you see what I'm writing in the chat?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Wait, no. Let me hold on. I'll go to the private chat. No, I didn't see it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Is that basically like everything? Like the real question becomes, what does perfection have to do with power, and what does power have to do with perfection? And then. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you read what's in the chat? Because you wrote it in the private chat, not on the public one. So can you just let everyone know?
Yeah. So like I started with, because like I'm a big Farley fan, and I don't know if you know that, Dr. Farley, but I'm a huge fan.
Thank you.
I've read a lot of their law reviews, and Chris will tell you, like a lot of them. And perfecting perfect and perfection is like words that I always use to talk about whiteness and talk about blackness and talk about identity. And this is what whiteness admits onto blackness is perfection. And this is what has necessitated the creation of white and black. That's the first thing that I wrote, because that's the first thing I was thinking about as I was listening to Dr. Farley. And the real question becomes, what does perfection have to do with power, and what does power have to do with perfection? That's kind of like the question that I wanna pose, and that's kind of like the idea that I want to display to what you've been saying, and to see if that necessitates like an answer.
Well, I could take a stab at it. I'm suspecting that you have a better answer for this, but I'll throw mine out and not. I think that when people posit some kind of perfection, some ideal that they're putting out into the world, you're seeing a fetish. You're seeing some kind of magical thinking. You're imbuing something with a kind of hyper reality. And you've got some purpose in mind. And that purpose is an invasion of actual reality. Right? So America is the perfect country in the minds of its Donald Trumpians. Right? So it can't be criticized. So that prevents us from seeing the mold, seeing the decay. My daughter, who you met when she was, I think, just 3 years old, talked about Sweden versus America. We used to go back and forth a lot. And she said, you know, the difference between Sweden and America is this. America, every American building has somebody homeless leaned up against it. Right? So that's what she noticed as but that can't get noticed if you're a Trump person, because this is perfect. right? We're the perfect people, the perfect country. And if there are any imperfections, it must be those who don't belong here, the people born in Kenya, perhaps like the former president was alleged to have been born. So I think this perfect union, perfect nation, perfect people, the others not sending us their best, the bans on religion, these are all fever dreams of folks who know their own lives can't bear scrutiny. They're afraid of what they will see if they look inside themselves. And this is what Baldwin talked about, right? This was the kind of alpha and omega of his genius. That what was wrong with you? Like, there's no such thing as the N-word, he said. You created him. What went wrong in your life that led you to need to create this hideous thing? That's the thing you need to face. You need to face your history. And until then, you're just walking around asleep. You're going to make mistakes that the rest of the world has to pay for.
Well, thank you so much. We are getting ready to head to the end of this particular segment. We've already gone over, and I'd like to thank all of you for allowing us to do that. Right, that's very, very much appreciated.
Awesome talk.
But before we leave, I do want to introduce. I'm going to bring two people on just to say hi, and we're getting ready to go into the next segment. Our next segment is going to have another legendary activist, Larry Hamm. Larry Hamm is just an amazing activist who's been working for close to since the late 60s, early 70s in Newark and around the state and around the region. He's known nationally for the work that he's done. Again, dealing with police, housing. If there is an issue that he has worked on it. The youngest member of the Newark Board of Education started when he was 17. Graduated from Princeton, came back to Newark to work and to organize, and has been he ran for the Senate against Cory Booker and on a Bernie Sanders ticket. This in the last election cycle. He is a friend of the program. He is a good person, friend of Newark, friend of mine. My sister is finishing up his autobiography. That collaboration. So whenever my sister said, whenever I see you, I have to
cooperate with your autobiographer.
Brother, the book. You got to do the book. So that's what she. And my sister told me she has to do that. Chris Randall said that too. Because there's so much rich history, right? Like there's so much that you have done. There's so many lessons that have been learned that we definitely need to know what a lot of those things are. Have you been listening to the conversation?
Yes, I have. Peace, everybody.
How are you? So anything that you wanted to? We were talking, of course, about the outlawing of teaching, quote, critical race theory. And what that means to us as educators and activists, and would love to have your input on that conversation as we take that conversation to a close.
Well, most of these racists don't even know what critical race theory is. They just like it because it's exotic sounding and they can use it as a boogeyman. It's really a cover for them to stop the teaching of Black history, Black studies, Black literature, anything that will reveal the true history and nature of this racist system that we've lived under for the last 5 centuries.
Fair enough. We're getting ready to close this particular segment off, but we always ask a question of everyone who's on our program. Daryl, this is the first time that you are on our program. Professor Farley, you've been on our program before. So who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group, or who are you rocking right now? We're All Politics Are Local, America's #1 political hip hop radio talk show. We always ask this question at the very end of our interviews. Talk to us. Who you listening to, and just let us know.
I'll start, I guess, Boots Riley and the Street Sweeper Social Club, or Boots Riley and the Coup, or anything Boots Riley does.
Okay.
Boots, left coast, baby.
All right, and I think that was your. I believe that might have been your answer last time. I think that was your answer last time.
I'm loyal.
All right.
Daryl Burks better not embarrass me. I know what he better say. He better not
before Daryl, before you answer, Daryl's also someone who has helped bring hip hop into the debate community as well, very much in terms of looking at like the intellectualism that is in the poetry of hip hop and putting it within debate. So I'm really interested to hear this as well.
I'm a huge DMX fan. And I don't know what Chris is alluding to, but I'm a huge DMX fan. Huge.
And I don't know why he's shaking his head, right? He's like almost like he's judging your choice. What's up with that?
So I went to an academic conference, and in front of God and everybody, said that I was given the 2.0 to his defense of 50 Cent paper. And he come on here in front of everybody, God and everybody, and say his favorite rapper DMX. That's what we get. That's what you get for being loyal to your mentors. That's what they do.
The key is a defense of 50 and what that meant, and a defense what that meant. And
okay,
that's what Chris is missing. That's not my favorite artist. 50 Cent is a good artist. I will defend that he is a good artist, but I love some DMX.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for doing that to me, baby. One more time. Yeah, one more. Yeah.
And also thank you, Professor Farley. Thank you, Daryl, for coming on. We have to have you both back on again. We will have you both back on again. This was an incredible discussion. Thanks for letting us keep your overtime as well. We absolutely appreciate you.
Thank you, Mr. Austin. Thanks for letting me be on the screen. I don't know what I did to deserve this, but you're on my Christmas list now.
All right, great. Because that is, I really wanted to get Daryl, you and Farley together because I do know that that Daryl loves your work. Used it multiple times, reparations, all the other stuff. So we will have you back again. We'll have you both back again, and so we will see you soon. Thank you.
Right. Fantastic. Anytime.
All right, take care.
Beautiful.
All right, so that's All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. We are getting ready to go into the next section of the vote. And Ed, welcome, man.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate being invited to the show.
invited to the show you founded, right?
That's
this is
laugh.
the founder of our show, Ed Riley, best friend for over 30 years. And yes, lots of good stories there. Lots of good stories there.
You telling our age, man. You need to stop that, brother.
I think our gray hair does.
Yeah.
I think all our gray tells our age, man.
Well, listen, man, we want to welcome everybody to the vote. Conrad did say that he's running late because he thought he was going to come through at 6, but he has a funeral to do at 7. So he said he's hoping to come through at the end of the show. And Rakia Lumumba hit me up. She said that unfortunately she got the kids down in Mississippi put together a pop-up Stop the Violence rally. So she sends her apologies. So I just hit Mitty up. So hopefully, Mitty, Tamika, and all of them will pop in somewhere during the show. But obviously, man, I wanted to try to have a conversation tonight with them, and particularly inviting Larry to come through. Larry, they had a meeting at the White House yesterday. And I'm sure you probably heard about it, probably seen it on the news. And some folks are already saying quietly in the Black nationalist community that it's always the same cast of characters that are invited to the White House. You never get the Larry Hams of the world, or the Bob Laws, or the Imhotep Gary Birds. None of them brothers and none of the sisters are ever invited to the White House to speak on behalf of Black people, or even to talk about what voting looks like on a local level with Black people for real. And that's why it's almost laughable when they said that they were now going, they told Joe Biden, I don't know if you heard this, but there were clips out there, Larry, where they're saying now that in fact, the title of the Washington Post article that was printed, the civil rights leaders dial up pressure on White House to protect voting rights. But they said more importantly that they were now going to go back in the streets to begin to promote voting rights and civil rights around this whole idea of voting. And so for me, in terms of talking to some of the brothers and sisters around the country, I was listening to what they were saying, and the conversation that they were having is that these folks hadn't been in the street. They're getting millions of dollars to their organizations. What about Pop? How come Pop didn't get part of the 30 or 40 million dollars, and he's constantly in the street? And so I want to, so if you giving the NAACP $30 million, and you giving some of the other folks who had millions of dollars, but Larry Ham does a rally almost about everything that goes on a voting level in the community. But they asked me, well, did Larry get any part of that 30 million? I said, no, I'll ask him. I'll ask him to come on tonight, and I'll ask him. So, Larry, did you get part of that 30 million? Did you get any part of that, my brother?
My brother. My brother. This is a first. This is a breaking news story on All Politics are Local. Neither Larry Ham nor the People's Organization for Progress received any money from the federal government. Any of this money, that money, or the other money. Past money, present money, or future money. And quite frankly, I would rather not get that money. Because the money always has strings attached. Now, there are some groups that are engaged in a lot of social service work, and they need that money because they have full-time paid staff people. And when I say social service work, I mean they're doing genuine work among the poor and distressed in our communities, and they need the money. But the People's Organization for Progress is a political organization. There's an old saying, it's hard to criticize the king when you eat the king's meat. So it's hard to criticize the federal government if you're a political organization and you're receiving millions of dollars from the federal government. So, I don't begrudge anybody for receiving any money. As I said, there are a lot of organizations that are doing genuine, good, charitable work in terms of feeding the poor, Meals on Wheels, and all kind of feeding programs and programs to help the homeless, and on and on and on. So yes, they need money, and I hope they get the money. But in terms of money for a political organization like our own, we have never accepted any money from the federal government, the state government, or local government. The People's Organization for Progress has never taken money from the government. And quite frankly, I think we'll be better off not to, because then, if we get pissed off at whatever administration is in power, we can say how we really feel, and we don't have to mince our words and have to worry about, oh my God, are we going to lose our grant? What did Larry say now? Larry going to cause us to lose our grant, and all our people going to get laid off. Right. We don't have that problem right now. Now, that doesn't mean we don't need money to do political work. We need it, but no, we didn't get any of that money.
Yeah, well, and so when they talk about going to the streets and to begin to put pressure, on the Senate and the Congress, particularly as it relates to them not passing certain voting rights, it seems like a conundrum to me, right? Because at the end of the day, these are folks who are saying, quote unquote, they are the civil rights organizations. And I would venture to say, Larry, that, when you're doing the marches, the only ones I really see out there would use is sometimes the local NAACP, right? Our sister. But I have not seen any of these national leaders who are now talking about they themselves are going to go back in the street. It would seem to me that it would only be right, if you're not going to accept the money. But the question is, why not make sure that some of the money are going to those local organizations who could then funnel money to the People's Organization for Progress so that it can stay independent. But even more to the point, Larry, I think that I'm curious to know, what is your thought, particularly on, because a lot of young brothers and sisters I talked to too, really took a look at what happened in Arizona, right?
Yeah.
With those two votes, and of course the Supreme Court dialing back the two votes that were there. I'm curious to know what's your thought on that?
Well, Ed, my thought is that we are engaged in a political war. There's literally a political war going on against Black people, poor people, working people, and oppressed people in this country. But it's the Black community that is particularly in the trigger hairs. Ed, do you know how many bills have been introduced to suppress voting in the United States in the last 6 months? Have you heard the figure?
No.
Jonathan, have you heard that figure? Is Jonathan still on?
Yeah, he's there.
I know that I know that it seems like there at least have been dozens. I have not kept track, but every week I hear about some new legislation that is undermining voting rights in a particular state.
Fellas, listen, what James Brown said, fellas, I want to do my thing. Listen, 800 bills. Write it down so you don't misunderstand what I'm saying.
Okay.
800 bills have been introduced in state legislatures all around the country. I think they've been introduced in 48 states. 800 bills designed to suppress the vote. Now, these bills are not designed just to suppress the Black vote, but they're designed to either eliminate or circumscribe voting practices that facilitate Black people, Latinos, poor people, and working people to come out to the polls. 800 bills. I don't think this even happened during the Jim Crow era. We're not talking about 800 bills over a 10-year period. We're talking about 800 bills introduced since Joe Biden was sworn in as president. There is a political war going on in this country, and it's not, people are not grasping the significance of it because it's not like a real war. It's not like people are being shot and killed right before us, but they are literally stripping us of our voting power. Now, they haven't stripped us of our right to vote, but they're stripping away all the things that have been put in place over the last 40, 50 years that would facilitate getting Black people to the polls. It's crazy. And what they're setting up is another catastrophe, another confrontation like we had on January 6th. If you think that what they did on the 6th was cataclysmic, that was a dry run. Some of these voting bills involve taking the oversight of boards of election, taking that power from them and giving it to the state legislatures. And what will this do? For instance, if a Democrat running for president wins in a Republican state, the state legislature could overrule the Board of Elections or the Secretary of State on the certification of that election. And in so doing, by denying that that state accepts the victory of that Democratic candidate, they could deny them the electoral vote. What they are putting in place are the pillars needed to prop up a coup in 2024. And I know that that may sound harsh to some people's ears, but I remember when I would tell people, like last summer, man, these people are getting ready to have a coup. And everybody looked at me like I was out of my mind, like, leftist, radical, extremist, wild-eyed, Somebody's phone going on. We okay?
Somebody must have had an Amber Alert on there.
Yeah,
Was that the civil defense notice? Or
Right.
was that FBI trying to shut down my remarks?
Maybe that was some suspicious timing. That was some Chairman Ham. That was some very suspicious timing.
But I'm telling you, mark my words, it is not over. These people are hell bent on white minority rule in this country. I shouldn't even say white minority because, I mean, you got to be scientific when you look at this thing. Yes, the majority of white people did vote for Donald Trump, but it was like, you know, what was overall, when you add it overall, it might have been something like 47% of white people voted for Trump, but 39% of white people didn't vote for Trump. So to say it's just a white thing does not really adequately describe the phenomenon that's in front of us. What we have is a white minority oligarchy, a racist oligarchy that is intent on holding power by any means necessary. And to hell with democracy. You know, you see just how important all these things. You know, I was a teacher too, Jonathan. I don't know if you knew that. I was a certified.
I did not know that.
Yes, a certified social studies teacher. So all that stuff that I was teaching kids at Weequahic High School, out the window. They don't get. I mean, there were legislators in I think it was in Minnesota of all places, not down in the Deep South. One Republican legislator said, "Oh, we got to talk now about the quality of the vote, not just about the quantity or how people vote, but the quality, meaning that there are certain people who should not qualify to even have the right to vote."
Right.
Which goes back to arguments that were made during the founding of the country. You know, those arguments, you can read them in the Federalist Papers. Those of you who are familiar with the Federalist Papers. But we're at a very dangerous situation in this country right now. And, you know, I just hope people don't sleep it like we slept the last one, because they are on the move.
No, I agree with you. It's interesting because, like, well, you know, I'm a debate coach, and a lot of times we're looking at articles, we're trying to predict what's going to happen, to make arguments, and it's uniquely scary right now because for me, it's the way in which language is being used, and the way in which language has no meaning. And anytime you are in any type of culture where language ceases to have meaning, right? Our last segment, we were talking about critical race theory, knowing that, like, they just mean, like, teaching race in ways that make us feel uncomfortable, right? Like, it's not a rational argument they're making. They're not making an argument about Derek Bell. They're not making an argument about Kimberly Crenshaw. Like, they're not making arguments about authors or people. It is just a thing, a boogeyman, right? Like, oh my God, you're teaching this boogeyman thing. And it goes beyond language. Like, when you're talking about violence as being something that we have to understand the way in which this is working, is that most people who watched the news predicted that violence would break out based on what Donald Trump was saying, right? Like this isn't like when you're looking and saying that democracy didn't work, that Biden is in the presidency and he stole the election. This is America. That's a call to violence. Like, if you don't have to vote, you go and you fight, right? Like the democracy, being able to vote is the only thing that keeps us from killing each other. Right, like that's right. The agreement. We vote. We and the other person might win, but we don't fight. Right. That's but right. When we start lying and saying that the election was stolen, right, then that leads to what you had on January 6th is very predictable, and what you're talking about now is even more scary, right? Because then you're talking, if Republican legislators do what they have legislated. If there is an election that they lose and the legislature overturns it, then I don't know how we are not in a state of another civil war. And the way in which they're talking about, January 6th never happened. Like we all saw it, right? We saw it. But when they say it never happened, right? When they say when and when I say they, I mean elected officials, senators.
That's right. People
right?
in Congress.
Like
Yeah,
if they were not elected to office, if they were fringe, I would understand. But when you're talking about 70% of Republicans, 70% of Republicans believe the election was actually stolen. That we don't have the same, we don't even have the same conception of reality. Well, what do humans always do when they have a different conception of reality in that way? They settle it through killing each other. I mean, that is the Civil War, right? Like that is all Civil War. That is all forms of like, those people can't vote. Those people aren't human. I don't think that many of our white allies realize that people who look like them, white people, are plotting on other white people. I think that white people in the United States, there are that segment of Trump supporting white people, there's a segment of them that are plotting on murdering other white people in ways that are larger, right? Like, because who was killing cops in January 6th? Right? Who was plotting to murder the governor of Michigan? And I think we're forgetting that these are no longer isolated, man. Like when you have the FBI and you have mainstream law enforcement organizations saying the greatest threat to American security right now is white nationalism, and they say, and they repeat it.
No, not just white nationalism, white domestic terrorism.
Right, white domestic terrorism. You're right. They call it domestic terrorism. You have the head of the armed forces understanding that he actually had to purge the armed forces because they had so many white supremacists inside of them. Right? So many white supremacists inside of the armed forces that it posed a national security risk. So I think that when you're like, hey man, I'm yelling to the rafters that people, this is dangerous. I think everything in the mainstream news is telling us this. I think our senators are telling us this. I think the refusal to even want to know about what happened on January 6th is part of that. Because if that was in the past, then we could talk about it. But I don't think it's in the past, right? And so to your point, I do agree. I do think that is absolutely what we are thinking about and the situation that we are in right now.
But also, I think that to Larry's point, I think that what's being played out, Jonathan, is exactly what Larry said. They're asking folks to turn the election in a whole nother direction, just like they did in Florida. Remember all of the pressure that Donald Trump was putting on those folks, where he said, "I only need this particular number of votes, and so I'm asking you to remove these black folks who voted, remove them, right, from the vote, from casting their votes, because he even gave a specific number that he needed." And so what Larry is painting,
11,000 votes. 11,000.
Right. So he knew exactly how many he needed. He was telling, those folks down there, listen, remember, he had private conversations with them. And he was doing his best to intimidate and gangster them to remove that. But now Larry is talking about their actual laws that they're trying to put in place in order to do that. And we're talking about 800 bills in 48 states.
Right.
And we're talking about, these cats already showed us what they're willing to do on January 6th and what they were willing to do in Michigan by threatening the governor, right? So these folks are telling us that, they're putting these laws in place, but they're also trying to dial back all of the civil rights bills and all the voting rights bills. And now what they're saying is that we're going to take it a step further, because and this is why the midterm elections are extremely important now, Larry. Because if we end up losing the House, and then a few years down the road we lose the Senate, you black folk are in trouble. And this is why, Larry, I think that the voter education that really needs to take place needs to begin yesterday, right? Because
Absolutely.
we have to explain to our folks how, and as Jonathan said, the only way we keep this country from becoming totally anarchist is that, you know, there's still somewhat of a democratic believing public.
Right.
But the Republicans are doing their best to remove that and trying to make it that it is, and then of course, remember, they've got the Supreme Court on their side, Larry.
That's right. That's right.
And so the only opportunity we're really going to have, and that's why, you know, I can't remember who said it, but if we're going to make any moves, we've got to make it now. And
That's
Jonathan was trying to have this conversation with the congressman around the filibuster, because if that's what's blocking us, we've got to take our shot now in order to do what we're going to do. Because if we end up losing the House, that's all over, Larry.
Absolutely, and I'm presuming that your position is that the filibuster should be abolished.
Yes.
And if that's your, and right,
Yes.
and that being your position, I want you to know that I support that position wholeheartedly, because if the Democrats cannot show that they delivered something to their base come next November,
Yep.
there's going to be a fall off in the voter turnout. And I think right now the Democrats only hold 6 or 7 vote majority in the House, you know, so the Democrats have to deliver. And I mean, right now it doesn't even look like Biden is going to get the infrastructure bill through the regular legislative process. They're going to have to use the budget reconciliation to get the infrastructure bill through. But all this other stuff, you know, like HR 1, which I support, S1, which is the what is they call? They call it the For the People bill. That's the voting rights bill.
Yep.
And then there's HR 4, which is the John Lewis voting rights bill. And then there are other things. I support all these things. But Mitch McConnell, you know, he said no. You know, on the day that they voted for the Juneteenth holiday, do you know what Mitch McConnell said?
What
On
he
that
said?
day, he said, "But you're not going to get your voting rights."
Right.
You know,
Right.
I'm
Right.
like, this is like, I don't know if you guys ever read Dante's Inferno. It's like scenes out of Dante's Inferno, man. You know, we dealing with 9 levels of hell. You know, here it's a very, very bad situation, and unfortunately, you know, we got these what they used to call blue dog Democrats.
Right.
In the Congress, Sinema, and in the Senate, you got Sinema and Manchin, and you know, they holding back the whole thing because they won't vote to. You need at least 51 votes to do away with the filibuster, and without those 2,
That's right.
Even with Kamala Harris, without those 2, you don't reach 51. You know, it's pure math here. You know, it's not high political theory. It's like 2 and 9 is 51, 49 and 2 is 51.
Right.
You know, so it's a situation we really at the local level have to do our best to fight the cynicism. There's a lot of cynicism, and it's justified. It's not unjustified. It's not without a material basis. There's a lot of cynicism about voting, and a lot of you know, even in the last election, there were people not just saying I'm not going to vote. They was saying no, we shouldn't vote. I don't support that position. Right. We need to vote in record numbers in 22. We need to hold on to the majority in the House, and we need to try to extend the majority in the Senate. You know, the last I heard, and that was today, you know, Warnock is up again for election. His election, his initial election was a special election. So he's up again for a full term, and they tell me it don't look that good.
It doesn't. And Larry, let me tell you what the problem is, right? Because I've talked to some of the folks down in Georgia, and particularly in Atlanta. What I'm hearing from the folks in Atlanta is that those young people who got riled up to go and vote for him, they're looking at, you know, what Biden and Harris is doing around not canceling student debt. And so them kids are saying, well, what are we going to do? I mean, you know, we gave you the 2 senators, and yeah, you gave some stimulus money, but he's holding up on passing student debt. And remember, Larry, I texted you about that. Remember that?
But that's what you got for
And
voting
them kids
for
are
Biden.
not. And them kids are not excited.
Biden was never for abolishing student debt. He had to be pushed.
I know.
After he won the primary, he had to be pushed into saying that he would do. I think they said 10,000. They would eliminate $10,000 of student debt. They can't even get that now. Right. But see, this is what happened. You had a choice during the Democratic primary between someone who would abolish all student debt and someone who at that moment said he was against abolishing any student debt. And so Sanders, who was for abolishing student debt, kicked ass in Iowa, kicked ass in New Hampshire. Biden left New Hampshire early, went to the South, and who stepped in to save him? James Clyburn. Right. You know, it was an ambush to make sure that Bernie Sanders didn't get enough votes out the South to lock up the nomination. This is what happens, and this is what is going to continue to happen as long as we settle on folks whose agenda is middle of the road at best or conservative at worst, regardless of whether they have Democrat or any other crat on their name. You know,
and they're gonna end up losing in Georgia. I'm telling you, them young people are not fired.
Clyburn told me, well, we don't know Bernie Sanders, but we know Joe. We know Joe.
Right.
You know, and everybody, and now people are having buyer's remorse. You know, buyer's remorse. Why did they even have that meeting at the White House? They had that meeting at the White House because even the civil rights leaders that was invited felt that Biden and Harris and what's the head of the Justice Department now? The one they nominated for Supreme Court.
Merrick Garland.
Biden, Harris, Merrick Garland, they felt that they weren't fighting hard enough on voting rights.
Right.
That's why the meeting was held.
Right.
To the credit of the civil rights. Forget whether or not Larry Ham was in the meeting or not. They called the meeting because they knew they took the temperature out here, and they know that people are saying, well, why didn't what's his name again? I'm having a mental block. The Justice Department head.
Merrick Garland.
Why didn't Merrick Garland go into Arizona and stop the count? They fiddling with a federal election. They spoiling ballots out there. Why didn't Merrick Garland go out there? They had already passed 3 or 4 voter suppression bills in Georgia before Merrick Garland had his press conference and said, we're going to do something about Georgia. Even Sharpton and who else was in there? I guess the head of the Urban League was there. What's the brother's name? You had him on the show. I guess they were all there. But even they are saying that you guys are not fighting hard enough. You're not doing enough on the issue of voting rights, and you're going to lose in 22 if you don't take some action now.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. And I agree with them on that. I'm glad they had the meeting. I mean, on one hand, I understand what you're saying. You know, the grassroots leagues don't get up, but you got to understand, they call that meeting.
Right.
They call that meeting because Biden and Harris and Merrick Garland and the administration has not been fighting. Now they're saying they're going to fight. They late to the fight.
Right.
That's like, that's like going to a Tyson fight. You're going to get there in the 3rd round. The Titan might be over. Tyson might have knocked him out in the 1st round.
Right.
You come to the fight late, and you come in, with a switchblade when them guys got Glocks and AK-47s. It's this is the conundrum that we're caught in the 21st century, and it's going to have consequences. I'm not sure. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what the consequences are going to be. But I know this, that we headed for another train wreck.
We are.
2020 was a train wreck. Yeah. And we headed for another one. It's going to be worse. Because this time, the second time around, they're going to have in place
all the laws that they didn't have before.
That's right.
Because they tried to do stuff before that was outside of the law.
That's right.
Now they're gonna have, now it's legal, and
That's
they're gonna
right.
have all that in place.
That's
They
right.
don't give a damn how many votes y'all cast. We won the, we don't accept the outcome of the election.
That's
Therefore,
right.
we holding back on our electoral votes.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I think that the situation is far more dangerous. Like when Joe Manchin's like, I don't know about the filibuster, and I'm just like, yo, like the filibuster doesn't even make any sense for Democrats anymore, right? Like because Republicans have three issues that they do. I got this from actually Donald Payne, right? Donald Payne told me this, right? He told all of us this. He said Republicans care about three issues. They care about guns, they care about the courts, they care about taxes. Taxes can be passed through reconciliation, right? For the rest of whatever, Republicans will never need to worry about a filibuster. They can pass as many tax cuts as they want because they can just do it through reconciliation. The same way we were able to pass the stimulus bill, the COVID bill through reconciliation, and probably pass the infrastructure bill through reconciliation. So taxes never are going to be affected by it. The second issue they have with the courts. Well, the Republicans made sure, Mitch McConnell made sure that the courts, you don't need a filibuster anymore, right? I mean, it's filibuster proof, right? So all you need is a simple majority to put people on the court. That's why when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, there was nothing the Democrats could do about it, right? Like there was nothing they could do about it because there was no filibuster in that case, and Republicans were able to get what they wanted. The third issue was guns, and Democrats will never be able to pass guns anyway because there are too many Democrats who would never do that, right? Like there are too many Democrats in red. If you're a Democrat in a swing state or a red state, you're not going to touch guns because you're going to lose, right? So they have the three issues that Republicans care about the most are filibuster proof. So when Democrats are like, well, you know, we might need the filibuster for the other thing, I'm like, nah, man, it on so many different levels, it doesn't benefit Democrats. And right now, Republicans, there is no real issue that Republicans really want to pass where the filibuster would be a problem. The only thing for them is that they use the filibuster to keep everything from Democrats, including voting rights. So they, like right now, they're trying to hijack the country. They're trying to use their ability to dominate state legislatures to get a lock so that the presidency will never again be Democrat. It is not a Democratic thing they're trying to do.
That's right.
Why would you have the state legislature be able to overturn an election, be able to withhold votes, be able to be like, oh, no, like to be able to do exactly what Trump wanted to do in Georgia?
That's right.
Right? Which was open corruption.
That's right.
But the minority of white people who are against Trump, like the 40% of white people who are like Trump is no Trump. I don't think they recognize the fullness which the Republican Party is an anti-democratic party. Give the Lincoln Republicans, give them credit because they're really clear, right? Like those Lincoln Republicans who are the Lincoln Project Republicans who are like
the law cabinet.
We are fighting because if they win an election, it will be the last election we have. Like they're clear. They're like, oh no, this is where we are because they know their own, right? The Lincoln Republicans are clear. They're like, they can't win. They broke because they're like, we like nobody here will agree. Will sit down in a room with Liz Cheney and agree on three issues, right? Won't happen. But we agree on democracy. We agree. Like, you know, the people who are in her party are dangerous to democracy. We agree on that, and that should scare everybody, right? The fact that like conservative Republicans who were just like, I never voted with Larry Hamm a day in my life, but Ed Riley, I would never vote for him. Like nothing he stands for, I'd be for, right? But for those people and us to share the exact same belief right now, right? To be on the same page when it comes to American democracy and the importance of this stuff and the danger that democracy is in, I think should really, really disturb people. I think it is more the like I don't think that many white liberals fully get where we are. that.
Well, I think, Jonathan, I think it's not only white liberals. I think a lot of black people don't get it either.
Fair.
I don't think it's just a white
Absolutely.
people's thing.
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot of black people that don't get it either.
Right.
You know, I think there are a lot of white people that don't get it. I think there are a lot of black people that get it. I think there are a lot of. I think the way this thing breaks down is that the people who get it are the extremes on both ends, and then everybody in the middle is kind of sitting on the fence. You know, you have, you know, the left people to get it, the right people to get it. Then you have the left of center people who get it enough to vote against Trump. The right of center people who get it enough, they vote for Trump. Then you have all these people in the middle that are kind of just waiting for the wind to blow, you know, and those are the people we have to struggle to get. I concretely, I think what has to happen, you know, we need to have like ongoing voter registration, like starting yesterday.
Right.
No,
Right.
every church. And
Right.
when I say ongoing, I mean voter registration until the day after the election of November 22. Ongoing, massive voter registration. Every church, every bodega, corner store, laundromat, bar, beauty salon, barber shop, standing on the corner, Broad Market, POP, we do voter registration every Saturday. That's just what we do. You know, we do it every Saturday, but everybody else got to do it. You know, we don't need just a few hundred people that Pop is registering. We need tens of thousands of new registered voters in 22. And we need to get people fired up, you know. It's like, it's business, you know.
Right.
Sometimes I even wish we could get to a point where we don't need to be fired up. You know, like we can't save ourselves unless we fired up.
Right.
You know, look, it's a business decision. We either do this or we die.
Right.
You know, why do we got to be all emotional about it? It's a business decision. You know, talk to business people. Ask business people how many customers they had that they have that they really hate. They really don't like. They got a lot of them, but they do business with them. You know, because it's about the money. You know, and we need to have this business attitude. You know, we get so emotionally invested in stuff that if we don't feel really fired up, we don't do anything.
Right.
And I think that's the wrong position to take. This is a business decision. Every black person need to vote, period. Every election. School board, Congress, state legislature, every election.
That's right.
You
John,
know, I ain't got to be Louis Farrakhan to give you an inspiring speech and take your black behind out to the polls to vote.
Right.
It's your bounden duty as a black person to do it, because our ancestors, and this is not a cliche, people literally were killed. People are getting killed right now. We ain't even got to talk about ancestors. People are being killed right now, but for standing up for black people's democratic rights.
And that's why, Larry, I'm saying that we've got to have some real political education, right? We've got to have a real grassroots conversation with black folks and get them to understand what is taking place right now in terms of them dialing back all of the work that black folk had done in the 60s, and get them to understand that there's a new level to this that's about to happen, that open corruption is about to take place from a democratic perspective, right? And that they fully intend. Remember, the people that they're going after, Larry, is us, right?
Absolutely.
They clearly take it because one of the major important voting blocks is black folk, and they realized that when Jim Clyburn did that in South Carolina. Because you got to remember, Biden was completely out of the game. He was out.
He was out. They had counted his own people had counted him out.
Right.
They had counted him out. I mean, we need to go back and play the things that some of the pundits were saying about Biden, you know, during the primary before Super Tuesday. They were saying, well, is he really coherent? Is he all there? You know? And then all of a sudden Jim Clyburn stepped in and saved, you know, to knock Bernie Sanders out.
Right.
I mean, it's this whole system, the way it operates to disempower us. You know, the mere fact that Wyoming, probably a state with not the whole state has about 600,000 people in Wyoming.
Right.
But they got 2 U.S. senators. New Jersey got 9 million people, and we got 2 U.S. senators.
Right.
So that means the people's vote in white Wyoming, their votes carry more weight than our votes.
Right.
I mean, the same way that we discovered that the Electoral College was working against us, really, the Senate is serving that same purpose on a regular basis.
And it's even worse because of the filibuster. Like part of the argument was that, like, we already have white minority rule based on what we can't change.
That's right.
Based on the way the Constitution is structured and what we can't change,
there you go.
We already have disproportionate power. So when Democrats are like, but we need this check, no, you don't.
Right.
Right. You are handcuffing yourself in a way that is not reciprocal. It will never be reciprocal because you represent so many more people. Right. Like this is like Wyoming has 700 times the voting power as California. Right.
Right. Exactly.
Having two senators. So when you're looking at just the way the Constitution is structured, they have 700 times more voting power. When you add the filibuster in, you are literally locking down like the party that has the black and brown people from ever accessing basic things. That's why, this voting rights bill is so important. In 2002, Samantha Power published a book called The Problem from Hell, right? Like we used to use it. And again, I'm a debate coach. We use a lot of the literature, right? So she came out with this book. This is before she was she became an advisor to Obama, but this is before that, right? She was an academic. She studied genocide, right? And she was studying the way that genocide took place, not during Nazi Germany, but all the ones that took place after that.
That's right.
And because she was like, it happens every 20 years, someplace around the world, right? We say never again, but we don't really mean it because we keep seeing these places where mass murder happens. And one of the things she looked at is that was scary about reading the book is the places that experienced mass murder, killing your neighbors, those types of intense violence. They were cool the week before.
Right.
Like they were having dinner, right? You had Christians and Muslims getting along, right? And then all of a sudden, the Christians were like, the Muslims got to die, right? Like you had the academics that are getting along, and then the next week, even when they were breaking down Rwanda, right? Like the weapon of mass destruction in Rwanda, what was it? The radio.
Right.
The radio.
Right. And that's the opening scene of Hotel Rwanda, right? Where somebody's talking on the radio, talking about kill the cockroaches. Isn't that the opening scene?
Right.
Hotel Rwanda. But a similar thing in Germany when Hitler came to power, and people should remember, Hitler didn't come to power by a coup. I mean, you always see Hitler in a military uniform, but Hitler was actually elected. He participated in election, and he actually became chancellor of Germany as a result of a deal. He didn't even win the majority of votes, but because they didn't have, no party had a real plurality, they had to cut a deal. So the major party, said, okay, we're gonna make Hitler the chancellor. And it was very interesting. In the reviews that were in the papers in the following days, people weren't overly excited. Like Hitler, the Nazis didn't even have a majority of the cabinet. I think they had 2 cabinet positions and Hitler is vice chancellor. And like even Jewish people, some of their leaders didn't express a whole lot of alarm when Hitler became chancellor. But you see,
it was a joke, right?
Well, it was a joke at the moment,
right?
But you see what the outcome was. He used that as a springboard to seize power. And again, I say the word seize power, but he actually didn't seize power. The legislature, the Bund, that's the Congress, the Parliament of Germany, they gave not the Bund, the Reichstag. They gave I keep getting messed up. It's the Bundestag. I think that's what the parliament is. The Bundestag. They voted Hitler. You know where the term Führer comes from? It's actually an office. It's a legal term. They combined the office of president and chancellor, and they combined that for Hitler and made him Führer. That wasn't like some cult term. That was the legal term that was voted upon by the parliament in Germany. He came to power through parliamentary means. And that's what's going on in America before our very eyes. They're using every tool, including violence. You know, they did a study already. 1 out of every 5 people that seized the Capitol was either police or military.
Right.
Either on active duty or retired. Police or military. You know,
1 out of 5?
1 out of every 5 of the 800 people that got into the Capitol were either military or police, either active duty or retired. 1 out of 5.
Wow.
And remember, all the police national organizations endorsed Donald Trump in 16 and in 20. See, this whole authoritarian mindset sits very well in the minds of a lot of people who are in military and paramilitary organizations. The Austin, the new Secretary of Defense, he had to order, and Jonathan said this in the beginning of the program, he had to order a stand down. They are rife. The U.S. military is rife with white supremacists and white supremacy. They had to have a stand down for internal investigation, and they haven't rooted anybody out. Ain't nobody been purged. There hasn't been no purge yet in the Army. I think they have identified some quote unquote elements, but ain't nobody been dishonorably discharged, anything yet.
And that's definitely not true of the police, right?
No,
that's definitely not true of the police.
Ain't nobody even doing an investigation on the police. But everywhere, I'm going to tell you, when they seized the Capitol, they had Trump flags, they had American flags, and they had that black and white police flag with the blue line was there too. I don't know if you looked at some of those pictures, but that police flag with the blue line, that police flag was there too.
Wow.
You know, it's man, this thing is deep. It's so deep.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm glad that Pelosi has gone ahead and formed a commission. To hell with bipartisanship. I don't give a damn if no Republicans are on it. Yeah. Somebody has to collect as much information as is possible with no restrictions as would be in a legal investigation, a federal investigation. There'd be all kind of restrictions. No restriction. We're going to get all the information. You know, it's not an accident that I was saying this on some other shows. Like after Trump lost the election in November, he started making appointments. Who makes appointments when they're lame duck? And if you looked at the appointments, they were all to the Pentagon and to the military. It was putting people, it was no accident that the National Guard was not called up in time to rescue the people there at the Capitol and to help the police.
Now,
because Trump's person and Flynn is a general in the United States Army.
Right. And his brother.
Flynn said the other day, he said, why can't we do what they did in Myanmar?
Right.
You know what they did in Myanmar? They had a coup.
Yep. Now, Larry, your sound has changed, has gotten a little weak.
Okay. I need to come out and come back in.
Okay.
I'll come out. It'll only take a second. I'll come out.
All right, perfect. Sounds good. All right. So what you were talking about.
We need him to close on that Haiti thing, man. Get his viewpoint on that.
True.
Because they just found out, John, it was a number of Americans, man, who were involved in that. You know,
like you're talking about the recent assassination of the president in Haiti.
Yeah, and that they were considered mercenaries, and that them cats were down there couldn't even speak French, so they were speaking English, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah.
Well, let's finish with what Larry was saying. I also want to talk about the anniversary of the Newark uprisings as well. We need to have a little bit of a conversation.
Let me say something real quick before you go to the uprisings.
Well,
You know there was a coup in Haiti, right?
Right.
yes.
This coup stuff is a specter haunting the entire world. This right-wing authoritarianism, take power by any means necessary. They tried to have a coup down there in Peru. Did you know that? Down there in Peru, they tried to have a coup.
Can you
Down
break down what happened? Can you break down what happened in Haiti and why we need to be concerned about that? Because I do think that what you're talking about makes sense. There are worldwide movements that happen, and I think that as a result of what Trump did in terms of denying the election, I do believe that that sets off things all around the world where people use the same language, the same rhetoric, and start doing the same things.
That's right.
And I think that's some of what we are seeing.
That's right. Look, them people around the world was watching the siege of the United States Capitol building. They watched that all over the world. They said, well, oh, hell, they can do it. If the U.S. can have a coup, we can have a coup too. I would bet money they started planning that coup on Martelly down there in Haiti, probably the day after the coup in Washington, D.C., the attempted coup in Washington, D.C. But the problem in Haiti was that Martelly, his term had expired. And he contended with the parliament. The parliament said, no, your term has expired. Martelly said, no, my term hasn't expired. He said his term hadn't expired, and then he dissolved the parliament.
Wow.
So they got no parliament. They've had no parliament since the end of last year. I think he dissolved the parliament in December. So it's been like one-man rule in Haiti for the last 6 months.
So essentially, it was the anti-democratic leader who was killed.
That's right, and it was probably a falling out among thieves. But I would dare say that I will always, despite the fact that I can't see it at the moment, don't mean it don't exist. I know the hand of the U.S. is in there somewhere.
Absolutely.
And, I know their hand is in there. They already they caught some of the guys. I think they got 4 of them.
4, right?
They got 4 of them. They captured 4, and some of them were saying, let me see, what were they saying? That some of them were out of a special military unit out of Colombia, and that they had been trained at the School of the Americas, which is a military institution outside of Atlanta, Georgia.
And some of them spoke English, Larry, because they couldn't speak French.
Yes.
Right.
They spoke English, and they said some of them spoke Spanish too, because it was about 30 of them, I think.
Right. Exactly.
That tried to do. But I think it was an inside job. I mean, how you gonna go and assassinate the president? You had 100 Haitian police or soldiers at Martelly's estate, and nobody was killed except Martelly. How you gonna have 100 police and y'all don't kill none of them people? You ain't killed one.
But that's why I told you, Larry, that there's no way they were able to go in there and the CIA didn't know what was happening.
Inside job.
And everybody knows how valuable Haiti is.
Yes.
Everybody.
Yes. Not only is it valuable right now, but in recent years, they discovered large oil reserves off in the ocean off the coast of Haiti. Large oil reserves.
Wow.
So it's a serious situation. It's a very dangerous situation in Haiti right now because nobody knows who is really in charge.
Right.
Now there's an acting prime minister, but people who were in the parliament, the dissolved parliament, say that he really doesn't have any power to appoint anybody. So there's no parliament, there's no president. The president's wife, she was hit. She's in a hospital in Miami.
That's right.
So we don't know what's going to. We discussed this last night in the pop meeting, and we said we needed to wait a couple of days to see how this thing unfolds, to wait to see what the organizations that are on the ground are going to do. But I'm telling you, all of this instability in Haiti goes back. It's rooted in the refusal of the United States to accept Aristide. as the genuine president of the Haitian people.
That's right. That's
all this. It goes. There were 2 coups against Aristide, and this goes back to the very first coup. There was one coup, and they brought him back, and then there was another coup, and then Colin Powell essentially kidnapped him and flew him to the Republic. Flew him and his wife and their kids, I think, to the Republic of the Congo, and then they were transferred from Congo to South Africa. I don't know. I think Aristide may be back in Haiti. I'm not really sure. But we need to see what the organizations on the ground are going to call for, because we need to support, what the people they're doing. But I didn't want to turn the whole discussion, on this. But I just think that it's no coincidence that we see these right-wing movements in countries all around the world, and that these seizures of power are taking place either electorally or through the military, in Europe. It's not just in the third world. You got Orban in Hungary. That guy's extreme right wing. Them people have torchlight marches like the Nazis used to do. You got these right wing movements in Europe. You have it in Latin America. They tried to, they overthrew. Is Zaid on the program? What was the brother from Bolivia that they overthrew? I can't remember the first indigenous
Evo
person.
Morales.
That's right, Evo Morales, and Elon Musk had a hand in that, because they overthrew Morales because Bolivia had large deposits of lithium, and lithium is essential to making these long-lasting batteries that they want to use for cell phones and to run people's houses and everything else.
Everything electronic, right?
Right. And it's known that Musk had some kind of connection to what went down against Morales, in Bolivia. So this is happening all over the world, including Africa, and it's we really need to get a movement going in this country. Well, it's going already. There are different movements. It's not like there ain't no movement. There's a lot of different movements, but we all need to unite. This is why I think the work that you're doing, Ed, in trying to pull a national Black political convention is so important, because number one, just from a spiritual kind of thing, and I don't speak from the spiritual corner too often. That's really not my purview. I'm not qualified, but I've had a feeling now for the last 10 years that Black people need some kind of great convocation, like we had during the last great convocation was the Million Man March, right. But that was what? How many years has it been since the Million Man March? 30? Has it been 30 years? Yeah. We need another convocation. But the other thing, because we spoke about this earlier, we need to build a Black consensus. Yeah. Like, I don't think the Black convention should be like trying to have the most radical position. I mean, if they take radical positions, I'm fine with that. But, I don't think that's what we should be looking for. I think what we should be looking for is a kind of consensus among 5 things, 3 things, or more that Black people, we all agree on this. We may disagree on everything else, right? But we agree on these 5 things. Yeah. And all Black people, regardless, Democrat, Republican, radical, not radical, we all agree on this. Like, for instance, we all agree African Americans should receive reparations. That should be one of the things we all agree on. Right. And our voting rights should be protected. That should be another thing that we agree on. And you get my drift. You get my drift.
I was gonna add, Larry, in terms of what you were talking about with Haiti. Apparently, this, as just recent news, Haitian government officials asked the United States troops to protect the port, the airport, gasoline reserves, and other key infrastructure, right? And we know there's a history of unwanted American intervention. And I think it's interesting that even in the story, and when you're always reading between the lines, when they say a government official, what you're talking about, given the nature of that government, well, who's asking And who do they represent? Like, or do they represent the parliament who was dissolved? Do they represent the president who was assassinated? Like the people who supported the president who were assassinated? You don't really know, right? But some government official was like, U.S. come in
the U.S. will take anybody. They'll take anybody right now. Who wants to come in?
And I'm not even saying that. Right, they're not even saying that they're not. There may be people on the ground who want that. I don't know, right? Like I don't know what these organizations are, and I think that is what makes this particular situation so incredibly dangerous that you were talking about before. But I wanted to let you know that.
Absolutely, yeah, no, the U.S. will use any pretext to come in. I also think that we should keep our eye on the Dominican Republic because there's a right-wing leader there too. Now he didn't, to my knowledge, he didn't have a coup, but he is on the right. And I wouldn't even be surprised if he might not have had some hand. I'm not saying he led it, but I wouldn't be surprised if he had some hand,
Because that in the Dominican Republic, in terms of there's an intense hatred among many of the elite of Haitians. They had a deportation of Haitians in the Dominican Republic that made Trump look like a liberal, right? It made Trump look like he was for open borders. They were taking Dominican citizens who had been citizens for they were born Dominican, right? They were born Dominican citizens, but they look black. I mean, they're dark, right? Like, because all Dominicans are black, right? Like, but all dark. They may not say it, right? They might not like it. But in terms of their history, but there is often in many places an intense cultural hatred of dark-skinned African-looking people, and
Haitians in particular. There's a great enmity between some of the Dominicans and Haitians. They have enmity toward the Haitians.
Right, and when it was
they were lynching Haitians. Do you know they had a parade in the Dominican Republic where some people dressed up like the Ku Klux Klan?
Wow.
Yeah, they dressed up like the Ku Klux Klan in the aftermath of the lynching of a Haitian man in Dominican Republic.
Right.
That was a couple years ago. And when they deposed Aristide, the armed unit that Colin Powell said was coming to kill Aristide was coming out of the Dominican Republic across the border into Haiti.
Wow.
So they got to keep their eye on their next door neighbor too. It's a terrible situation. They never forgive Haiti for getting their freedom.
Right.
The Haitian, the second oldest republic in the Western Hemisphere, the only republic in the history of humanity that grew out of a slave rebellion. When I was a kid, I don't know, I guess I'm the oldest one here on this panel. When I was a kid, anybody remember the movie Spartacus with Kirk Douglas? You remember Spartacus? Yeah, well, we learned we went to the movie to see Spartacus. And Spartacus led a slave revolt. Spartacus was a real person. He wasn't a fictional character. He was when you take Latin, probably in your second year Latin in high school, you would read the Servile Wars. And there were 3 Servile Wars. The Servile Wars were 3 major slave uprisings against the Roman Empire. And I believe Spartacus led the 3rd Servile War. And he almost won, but he didn't win. And they crucified his people all the way from one end of one side of Italy to the other side of Italy. They hung people on crosses. But in Haiti, the slave revolt was successful. But you don't see no movies about Toussaint Louverture and Boukman and all the others who defeated the superpower of their time, which was Napoleon. They defeated. All of us took classes, social studies. We learned how great Napoleon was. Who was the one that defeated Napoleon? Toussaint.
And Napoleon called an L.
Toussaint and Boukman and the rest. They defeated the superpower of their day. That's why the United States is one country from the East Coast to the West Coast. because Napoleon spent so much money trying to defeat the Haitian Revolution. He bankrupted France, and they were getting ready to have a coup on against him. They were getting ready to throw him out. He made a quick move. He sold the Louisiana Territory, which was everything west of the Mississippi that France owned. That's why they speak French down there in New Orleans. He sold the Louisiana Territory to Thomas Jefferson. And that's how he got money to keep from being overthrown. And the sale of the Louisiana Territory enabled the United States to open up the routes to go all the way out to California and the Pacific Ocean.
Right.
So the United States owes a debt to Haiti. You know, black people everywhere in this hemisphere that were enslaved owe a debt to Haiti, because the Haitian Revolution gave momentum to the struggle for abolition of slavery. The Haitian Constitution, the very first Constitution, declared the Haitian state to be an enemy to slavery and called for the abolition of slavery everywhere in the Western Hemisphere. Simon Bolivar, who we learned about. If you, Jonathan, you taught social studies, right?
Nope, English.
You taught English. Well, in social studies,
but actually, we use her for when I taught her in debate more when we're looking at feminism, critiques of feminism, stuff like that.
No, not Simone, not the writer of today. I'm talking about Simon Bolivar, the great liberator of Latin America.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Simon Bolivar. Yes, he went to Haiti. The Haitians gave him refuge when he was an enemy of the state, when he had a bounty on his head. The Haitians gave him refuge, gave him money, gave him a printing press, gave him an office, and said he could launch his revolution in Haiti. They only had one request, that everywhere that Bolivar liberated, he had to abolish slavery. Now he agreed to that. It didn't happen immediately in a lot of places, but he did agree to that.
I did not fully realize that. Chris,
that's right.
Chris Randall, you talk a lot about you love talking about Haiti. I know that because there's so like almost every topic that we have because you're like Haiti is the most important thing that like country in terms of that what happened to it to the United States and you're always talking about it. Do you want to add anything to this conversation?
Oh, I think that to Mr. Ham's to his point, the reason why we don't learn about Haiti is because it's not a story that America wants you to get comfortable with. They do not want you to get comfortable with that. You look
That's
like,
right.
As when Professor Farley was talking about Fanon, talking about you count your sticks and your rocks compared to the gunships of your enemy. You feel like you have to cooperate. Well, when Toussaint and Dessalines and Boukman made that analysis, they decided that France equals loser and that they were going to lose. And what we learned is Elijah Muhammad was right, that black unity is more powerful than a nuclear bomb. That when black people get on one accord and think in a revolutionary way, there's nothing you can put in its way to stop that, you know? So I think that is the simplest thing, is that the reality of the Haitian Revolution, if you study it and learn about it and then inspired by it, how that would affect your politics and the way you think about the world might be different. And then maybe we wouldn't think that we need to, vote for Chucks and Pearls and, whatever. It's cool. It's all right. I ain't gonna bring it up. It's cool. That's all. It's all good. Hey, Mr. Austin, have you listened to any Nina Simone lately?
Lately. Yes. What are you leading into that?
I was trying to figure out who, if anybody had anything to do with that estate getting moved from the family or anything like that. I don't know if any attorneys were involved in that. You never heard anything about that?
I'm not. I am unfamiliar with what you're talking about right now.
No, you don't remember. You haven't heard anything about certain vice presidents being involved in the Nina Simone family losing the handle of the. You didn't send me that. It wasn't you.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
You sure?
I got to give the Shaggy answer. Wasn't me. Like
Well, let me go
send
with the
that.
Shaggy answer. We already know what that means.
I did not send that. I did not send that to you. I did not send that to you.
We got it. It's all good.
All right.
But no, I think that's what it is. I think that it's the inspirational notion. It's that all politics are literally local. And that when people when they can become centered around a particular idea of liberation. It doesn't matter how much power somebody else has. And I think that they don't want kids who come from marginalized backgrounds to be thinking about that. That's why when Dead Prez say karate mean empty hands, so it's perfect for the poor man. That's what is real. I mean, if Larry Ham was white, he'd be speaking at every college, every university. He'd have every dollar in the history of money. If he were white, oh my God,
he would be pictured as a liberal.
He would have a dog named Bo. He would be everywhere. He would be everywhere you want to be, like the American Express. Can you imagine a person with that background in white? Man, please. The difference is you don't want kids growing up thinking that they can be Larry Ham, because then you're not going to be very comfortable in the house. And we like you in the house.
That's right. That's right. That's why they had
class boy from Norco going on to Princeton, and he started shaking things up in Princeton. Now your dad is folks ain't with that.
You know,
he's still shaking things up.
The reason why I had to learn about Larry Ham after Mr. Ham. I want you to get when we all get off the screen. You call Baba Zaid and you cuss him out because he need to tell people that the police work for y'all sometime. Okay?
I do all the cussing.
Yeah, you call him and cuss him out. So that way I'll know that the police work for y'all sometimes, so I won't run across the street and go to prison. Anyway. But I would say that the reason why we don't learn about these things is because they reverberate through history in a particular way. You can't clean
inherently insurgent.
Yeah, you can't clean up to Toussaint Louverture like you can do Malcolm X. I mean, like
there's a film
like Martin Luther King.
On the question of film. There's a film that Danny Glover has been trying to get distributed for several years that he actually did on the Haitian Revolution. Man, every opportunity you can come up with in the distribution network of the film industry has blocked that.
How could you navigate a theology of prosperity that is preached in pulpits all over the country when you start thinking about Nat Turner as a preacher?
That's right.
How do you navigate hope and change personified by a neoliberal person with melanin if your image of what a black politician is Toussaint Louverture? You can't do it.
Right.
And that works against the American political project, which is why we don't know anything about it.
Right. That's why they had to get rid of Aristide, because you couldn't have a black president. You couldn't have a black president in the Western Hemisphere, you know, who was preaching economic justice. I don't know that Aristide was a socialist per se, but he certainly had a program where he was going to redistribute wealth to the poor of Haiti. And Aristide,
which is inherently socialist,
spoke English. He not only spoke Creole, but he spoke English.
We had him in Harlem.
This is why they had to also overthrow Maurice Bishop. Now, Maurice Bishop was a socialist and was an English speaker of Grenada, which had been a British colony.
Right.
And they had to get rid. They didn't want no black Fidel Castro, because that's what they were saying that Maurice Bishop was. He was a black Fidel Castro. They did not want no black Fidel Castro, you know, and they don't want our youth. You know, the other thing about the Haitian Revolution is black men with guns. You know, you don't want to tell no story, but black people got their freedom and built a nation and did it through the force of arms. I mean, look, you don't see any stories in American history about black people with guns. They barely want to talk about
the Civil War.
That's right, just the Civil War. And they really don't talk about the role of black soldiers in the Civil War. I mean, if it had not been for that movie Glory,
black soldiers won that goddamn war.
And let's be clear. There's two, and maybe I'm wrong, but I've been bitter about something my whole life. I'm so sick of Crispus addicts and why. I want to know what was Crispus doing there. Why was he there? What was he even there with them white folks? I'm confused. But I do think that America likes black stories that are redemptive of the American image of itself.
Absolutely.
Right.
I have a dream that one day black children would want to hang out with white children.
Right.
Yeah, and even though
that's kind of radical right there.
No, it ain't. Especially not if you clip off the rest of the
These
story.
white folks don't want their kids hanging around no black folks.
But Bob is like, if you
loving black folks,
if you're not going to tell the story where the story start off with America wrote a check,
insufficient funds.
Insufficient funds.
We still want that damn check.
And when you start saying, if you take the "I have a dream" speech out of that context and clean it up, and all you want is a white toilet for your brown buttocks, I ain't got no MEA, man. I don't know.
Now, when we're talking about Haiti, but we also wanted to segue into looking at the uprisings, right? Like the history is next week. The anniversary is next week.
54th anniversary.
54, that's right.
And I believe, and I just
go around then.
But I was gonna ask, Larry, were you? Because I know there was the same in Plainfield. Were both of you around when that happened?
I was actually in
13.
East Orange.
I was 13.
I was on South Clinton Street in East Orange. South Clinton, maybe about 5 doors from Central Avenue. Going to get my Geno Giant, watching the tanks rolling in the north.
Can you both talk?
The elders who were supposed to be responsible for my kid got in my ass and better kick you and bring your little black ass home, right? Them tanks will roll over your little ass. This is real stuff.
And
I was about 7.
You know what I remember about that time. I was very young, but I lived across the street from a Mary Baraka, and I can remember them coming up Sterling Street, and my mother and father telling all of us to get underneath the bed, and I can remember all the stores on Springfield Avenue, South Orange Avenue. I can remember black folks busting those windows out. Busting the restaurants out and so forth, because it seemed like the only way that we could strike back was to strike their property.
Right.
That's what it seemed like to me as a child.
Do you remember the stores that had Soul Brother? Do you remember the stores that had Soul Brother written on them?
Yeah, I remember that.
And the police went after them.
Right. That was the thing that saved them brothers' stores, right? Because and then of course when the sun would come up, black folk would go to them black stores to purchase their goods, right? Because they were the only ones that were open.
Can I ask a question? Mr. Riley, can I ask a question? Is it okay? As an attorney who works in the legal system, how does an experience like that affect the way you see the law?
Well, it's interesting. I think that, one of the things I've been thinking about lately is that when you say that, as I was looking at, this critical race theory and all of that, because I was talking to the sister who actually coined that phrase. She's a law professor up at Columbia University, right? Crenshaw. And
I've been trying to reach out to her.
Yeah. We're gonna have her on. I'm gonna drop some news on y'all right now. She's actually gonna be a part of the National Black Political Convention. She's gonna organize, a number of black college professors around the country who aren't afraid to have this dialogue that white folk are afraid to have. But here's what she said, right? She said, of course, y'all know she coined that term, critical race theory, but she said she has argued that the law can often be interpreted in a way that benefits the ruling class, no matter what the law actually says. Right? And so she talks about that, man. She, and she's absolutely on point. And Larry, as you talk about them changing all of the voting laws and all of that, they're going to design this to fit whatever narrative they want to create.
That's right.
So it doesn't really matter. And the only reason Christie didn't go to jail with Watergate is because he skirted the rule of law.
Right.
And remember, it was Donald Trump. Donald Trump said during the campaign, remember he said that he knew Christie and that Christie ran a tight ship. And if there was any law breaking going on, Christie knew about it.
Right. And Christie let other people take the fall for Bridget.
He did. Absolutely.
Yeah, he let other people. But Ed, the thing I wanted to say about the rebellion and trying to tie together the rebellion to the move that you're making for another national black political convention. You know, I lived through the rebellion. I literally lived a mile from where the rebellion started. I lived on South 12th Street, 18th Avenue. They arrested Tom Smith at Fairmount and Springfield, and they took him to the precinct there on 17th Avenue and Livingston Street. At that time, people called it the 17th Avenue precinct. I think they call it the 1st District precinct now, but at that time, people call it 17th Avenue precinct. But the thing I wanted to say, number one, is that we were under military occupation. Yeah. When you go back and look at the pictures, just Google, hit images first, and then Google 1967 Newark riots or 1967 Newark rebellion, whatever word you want to use. You look at the pictures, it looked just like Palestine. Yep. The tanks, the soldiers, the armaments, everything. So that's thing one. We were under military occupation. And you know, when you get my age, I'm 67 now. Sometimes I think I imagine things, right? And then I got to go back to history to verify that I actually knew these things.
Like, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I wanted y'all to see this. This was the first thing I read when I moved to Newark.
There you go. There it is.
This was the cover of the Life This was the Life magazine cover.
That's right. I posted that this week.
Yeah, it was a Life magazine cover.
That young man actually survived that shot.
July 28th, 1967. This was the Time magazine cover.
That's right. But the thing is that 27 people were killed. Nobody was ever indicted. And you know why that's significant? Because I was talking with a reporter this weekend who has been talking with Brendan Byrne. And he said in past conversations with Brendan Byrne, who was the prosecutor at that time, that Brendan Byrne said he regretted not having pursued any prosecutions for the people that were killed in Newark at that time. Now, when the people were killed, they said they were killed by snipers. But then it came out from the medical examiner that all the bullets were bullets from either the guard, the army, the state police, or the local police.
That's right.
That none of them people had been killed by snipers. So we were under military occupation, just like other third world countries were under military occupation. Right. The thing I think was the most amazing thing about 1967 is that literally less than 10 days later, Newark had a black political convention.
National Black Power Conference. That's right.
Yes. Less than 10 days. Now, you couldn't
He had the bandages still on his head.
Right. You couldn't get in and off of my street without being stopped by the guard. The guard had my street, 12th Street, blocked off at both ends.
They had Stellar Street blocked off too.
We couldn't get in and out. So I'm amazed that somehow all these national black leaders, black militants, were able to come in and have a Black Power conference downtown Newark. So there was a Black Power conference in 1967. There was a black political convention at West Kenny Junior High School in 1968. There was the Black and Puerto Rican Convention in 1969, out of which came the Community's Choice ticket that had Gibson for mayor, Sharp James for council, and all them other people who got elected in 1970. And then Baraka calls for a national black political convention in 1971, which was held in 1972. But check this out. Amiri Baraka wrote a pamphlet in 1970. The title of that pamphlet was Toward a Pan-African Party. It's a little pamphlet. It's not a big book. It's a pamphlet. It might be 20 pages, 30 pages. But in that pamphlet, Toward a Pan-African Congress, Amiri Baraka laid out the whole plan that he had, not only to get to the Black Political Convention, but the whole purpose of the Gary Convention was to have a black presidential candidate come out of the Gary Convention to run in 1972. That was the plan. And it's all there. If you can find that pamphlet, toward a Pan-African party in the 20th century that Amiri Baraka wrote. It's all laid out there.
One of the reasons why I say that we definitely have to have you and that book is because in 1 or 2 years, you have done, and we could learn more from stuff that you've done than many people who, you could write about their whole life and not as much.
I want you to know, Mr. Austin, I posted the link to where that article is, because I may or may not have sent you that 5 years ago and you ain't opened that email. But it's cool. It's all good. I ain't gonna hold it against you. Because you my boy. I ain't gonna hold it against you. I'm not gonna say I sent it to you and now I got the elder leaning on you in public. I ain't gonna do that to you because that would be wrong to point out I sent that to you and you ain't open it.
Yeah, Chris Randall. I always say he literally is one of the best researchers in the country.
Man, look. I met Baraka. The first time I met Baraka was actually in 1970. He came to my high school to speak in 1970, and I was like enamored with him then. Everybody was whispering, running around the school whispering, Leroy Jones is coming, Leroy Jones. And I expected to see this 10-foot tall black man, but when I saw him, he may have been diminutive in stature, but brother, I had never heard a black man speak like that. And he may have been short, but he had 2 giants with him as his security. 2 brothers that was almost 7 feet tall as his security. So that was the first time I saw him, and I had to pass his headquarters every day going to school, Kalu Umoja, 502 High Street. But it's hard to put in words. The point I'm trying to make now is it's hard to put in words the atmosphere of the time. Revolution was in the atmosphere. Blackness was in the atmosphere.
Right.
We don't have anything. Even with the great work that has been done by the Black Lives Matter movement, you really can't understand the ethos of that time. Black revolution was in the air, and when Baraka put out the plan that we were going to have a black political convention in Gary, Indiana, it looked like we were on the road to real black power at that time. It didn't quite work out that way, but
you know why we don't have it now?
Why?
Because I can't give none of these smart black kids your book because you won't finish the book. Maybe if you finish the book, maybe we can get somewhere.
Well, we're gonna try. We're gonna try.
That ain't revolutionary rhetoric. We're gonna try.
Some of that's gonna have to be in the second book. There's gonna have to be a second book.
You got to get the first one done.
That's right. We got to get the first one out.
We're gonna get it done.
Because you got to talk about it like a dog.
We will not fail.
Listen, the reality is this. The reality is that they have this. There's this proverb from an African tradition that says, "When an old man dies, a library burns to the ground."
I've heard that.
Yeah. Well, how about this? Can you make it a lie? Could you please let us publish the stuff?
We'll get it out there.
Because the reality is this. The coolest moments I've had in my life are with the people that are on this screen. Like when I die, hopefully I get a chance to tell a child that's associated with me that Ed Riley made me go snatch his recorder off Al Sharpton's podium because he left his recorder in there. He sent me in there to get it while Al Sharpton. Hopefully I get to tell the story that Zaid Muhammad almost got me beat up by the police because he didn't tell me that the police was working for him. Hopefully Jonathan Austin, I'll be able to tell a story about.
Ed should have told you to snatch sharp. Let me stop.
about Jonathan Austin taking me to Harvard, and then I get blamed for setting the whole community fire. And maybe one day I can say, and here's Larry Ham's book.
All right.
Since DJ Rhino always go to black stuff and hip hop stuff without me, it's cool.
DJ Rhino. This is the 50th anniversary of Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On" album.
That's what's up. That's what's up. I should have had my Tamala shirt on.
Right.
Tamla record shirt. I should have my Tamla record shirt on for
that. Berry Gordy didn't even want Marvin Gaye to even do that album. Wow. He didn't want him to do no political music.
Too strong. Yep.
He was following the right producers. No political music.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Like, just last week we were talking about Melly Mel's The Message.
Right.
And when they put out The Message and how they didn't want to do the record at first because it was a slow song and it was a political song.
Right.
But it ended up being like a huge record that changed the game.
Hell yeah.
You know what I mean? And
for real, The Message.
Same thing with Marvin Gaye. With what's going on? You know, they didn't want him to do it. And another one, John, we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, Rebel Without a Pause.
Right.
With Public Enemy.
Right.
Russell Simmons didn't want them to do that. He was on, but because he was on vacation, they slipped it through anyway. While Russell was on vacation, and they put the record out anyway, and it became the huge game changer that it was. So I
didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's the same thing with Marvin Gaye, and
here's the thing, DJ Rhino, and I love the fact that you're wearing an Artifacts t-shirt. That makes me happy. But the thing about the people on the street is that you all are artifacts to a liberation struggle that needs to be archived at all times, right? And so I didn't know that DJ Rhino was just cool to all the kids start being like, who's all these people? I'm like, where you get that from? They're like, DJ Rhino's cooler than you. He got a t-shirt on. And you're like, oh, okay, got it. I think that the reality for me is I wish all of you knew how important you are to the people around you, right? Like, Mr. Happ, you don't understand. The police officer was walking behind Baba Zaid, and I came across the street. He had to restrain me. He didn't tell me they was working for y'all. He did not tell me. But I think that the reality is this. I think the thing about Marvin Gaye's music, I think the thing about Sam Cooke's music, I think the thing about the Ozzy Brothers, Earth, Wind and Fire, James Brown, that entire time period is that they don't
forget Kurt.
That's right.
Curtis Mayfield, yeah.
All that art imitates life. And the reality is we have to live a certain life so that we can have art that reflects that. And unfortunately, what was interesting for me in the culture now is that all of you are the future, even though you think you've gotten to a certain age. There's one of my favorite films is a film called The Book of Eli. And there's a scene in the Book of Eli where Denzel is the only, and I think everybody should peep the fact that Denzel is the only black character in that movie. I don't know if anybody paid attention.
Interesting.
And he says they have a conversation between the Denzel character who has the Bible and another character. He says, "You think we are from the past, but we're also the future." The reality is it's not about a torch being passed; it's about a legacy being passed.
Yeah.
And if y'all don't,
the wisdom that's being
talk
carried
about certain things and publish certain things and say certain stuff, like with these, I remember I got into an argument, Mr. Ham, one time with DJ Rhino about hip hop, and he just kind of looked at me like this. He was just like, we were in the studio at the university. He just kind of looked at me like, and I'm like, you know so much more about this than why am I even talking? I shouldn't even be talking. It's like we should have those stories. So I just wish that you all would be more forthcoming in a hubristic way about it.
But I also think Chris played himself, right? I think Chris is brilliant, right? He's well read. He knows a lot about a lot of different things, and I think that's why Jonathan and I was talking about him when I took Jonathan out to dinner this week for his birthday.
Yeah.
So I haven't said happy birthday to Jonathan. Of course, he is now officially
happy birthday, brother. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And so Chris is brilliant in his own right. And I think that's one of the reasons we enjoy having him around. We enjoy talking to him, and I told Jonathan a lot of stuff that he says, a lot of us, have read it or seen it, but we've never taken it to heart in the way that Chris, comes back and elaborating. And he shares a lot of really, really great information. And he's gifted in terms of working with other young people, right? So, Chris, you always bigging other people up, man. But I've never seen you not be able to communicate with other people that you meet. Everywhere that you've gone with me, that we've gone together, I've always enjoyed having you with me because you know you communicate well with other people, you meet other people well, and I've never seen you not be able to jump into any other conversation. I mean, it doesn't matter what's being said, Chris. You can always add something to that conversation. So you and yourself, you big us up all the time, but we bigging you up too, man. So you know, and John likes to remind me, you ain't that young of a man yourself.
And
Larry, he like to talk about us, right?
But what's cool? But here's the thing. Here's the thing. What's cool about it? I've never felt as broke as I felt when you go out with Ed Riley. When you go out with Ed Riley, you're like, yo, I'm broke, bro. I ain't got no money, dog.
No, you listen to John Austin. Larry, you listen to John Austin.
Ed Riley, you go somewhere with Ed Riley, the person that's rich in the room be like, oh, Ed, hi. How are you? How are you, buddy? Oh, buddy. Yeah. And you know when white folk get the buddy in you, you know. When they get the buddy in you.
You're all right.
Larry, he listened to stories by John Austin.
Wow.
And Larry, we only
have about 3 minutes left. I just want to, I know that we always talk about what's going on, but there are just a few things. Like first, DJ Rhino, why the artifacts shirt? Can you explain that? And then also, Larry and Zayed, tell us what's going on, what's coming up. And then Ed, of course, close us out.
You on mute, DJ Rhino?
There's no thing with the artifact shirt. I just got family on today because, like I said, originally I didn't have much on. I mean, much for the segment, but two things. Check out Styles P. He just put out an album called Ghosting. Anybody who's in their 40s and 50s, I would say that, that's my generation. I would say you're going to have to do a Kendrick. When Kendrick put out his Damn album, he told people to listen to the album in reverse. Listen to the last album to the first. The last song to the first song. So I would do that with Styles P's album because if you listen to the last song to the first song on the album, it gives it the effect that I feel the album should take on. But it's a good album though overall. So that's Styles P, Ghosting. Also Papoose, he's a mad creative brother. He put out another it's like an EP. It's called June. And what I think he was doing, he was putting out a project every month. So one was called January, another one was called March, another one, April, going down the line. You know what I'm saying? January, February, April, March, April, all going down the line. And he was naming the projects after the months. And so the one that he put out this past month was June. And he's got a lot of great concepts on there. The music is great. Just check it out because he's got one called Zodiac Killer, and it was just real interesting because he's going down the line of the zodiacs, and he speaks of the good points of the zodiac, and then he of each zodiac sign, and then he goes into the bad points of each zodiac sign, and then he speaks of his way and how he kills like the image of or the symbol of each zodiac. So it's weird. It's called Zodiac Killer. But then he's just got a lot of if you're familiar with Papoose, he has stuff talking about the alphabet. He goes down the line doing a rhyme with using the alphabet. He does all kinds of crazy creative things. He reminds me of Nas in that respect. But check it out. The name of the album is called June, and it's by Papoose. That's Remy Ma's hubby right there.
Okay.
Also, we gotta shout out Moo Fresh.
Yes, Moo Fresh. Once again, she got an album out called Queen of Culture. Look for that album. She has a video. It's like a mini film. It's like 16 minutes long. It's called Rap God, Words of a Rap God.
Yeah, I've been posting it.
Yeah. Or Work of a Rap God, rather. And yeah, check it out. Moo Fresh. That's crazy. That's crazy. Also, John, I don't know what that was that you linked me to, that the Juvenile and Manny Fresh, the Vax that thing.
Right.
Oh man. Oh, God.
They're trying to do anything to get people to take the vaccine, man.
I mean, I respected that, because I respect that, but man, it was horrible.
Man, I took my second shot yesterday and it whooped my ass.
Okay,
That's
I
the
just got
thing,
two
though.
questions. Chris Paul, fully vaccinated, and worth 600 million, caught an L, and I want to know if you got Negroes who worth 600 million and they catch an L, what is Baba Zaid about to get? Just my thought.
Right.
Word. Moving
Right,
on. That's all. I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm just gonna
Right,
leave that
because right.
I ain't gonna get a damn thing.
So with Zaid and Larry, what do we? We're going to let you. What are some of the final things you have to say? Some things to look out for, and anything to wrap up.
Well, Larry's going to shout out what we're doing for the March anniversary. But I just want to shout 2 young people out on the Black Lives Matter front. Shantae Smith, and I'm trying to get them on from Black Lives Matter down in the Burlington area. There was this uproar about this white racist who been terrorizing this neighborhood, and folks. He put his address out, and folks showed up at his house.
Oh, right.
Demanding that he be arrested.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to get Shantae. I want to shout Shantae out for her role in helping organize that. I want to shout out Zelly, our little brother Zelly from Patterson. Got a Black Lives Matter summer camp. Right, teaching kids to the leadership skills of the Black Lives Matter movement. Young high school students. I love that. This is why I always say teachers and social workers make the best organizers. A young brother's a teacher, and he's doing what teachers ought to do. He's organizing and teaching young people to do for themselves. I just wanted to shout them out.
Cool.
Tim, go ahead and tell us about Monday.
Common put out an album. Common just put out a video and a song called Imagine. That was something else that you linked me up with, John, which was real hot. I like it a lot. It features a sister named PJ who sings on there. Check that out. Common. It's on YouTube. Imagine. That's it.
Okay.
Then we'll go ahead about the
Yes. Monday, July 12th marks the 54th anniversary of the Newark Rebellion, People's Organization for Progress. Almost from the year we were founded, which was 1982, we have observed the 1967 Newark Rebellion, and we will do so on Monday, July 12th. 5 p.m. we will meet at the Rebellion Park, which is 250 Springfield Avenue. That's that little park sandwiched between 15th Avenue and Springfield Avenue and Hayes Street. But the number is 250 Springfield Avenue, and there's a monument there that actually has the names of all the people who were killed in the uprising of 1967. So we want everybody to come out and join us as we commemorate the 1967 rebellion, which was started by an incident of police brutality. And we're going to connect the rebellion of 67 with police brutality that is going on today. We're going to demand justice for Carl Dorsey, who was killed by the Newark police. We're going to demand justice for the Rodwell Spivey brothers and the release of Jasper Spivey. And we're going to highlight a whole bunch of other police brutality cases in New Jersey and in the nation. We're going to march from the monument, march from that little park there at Springfield and Irvin Turner Boulevard. We're going to march to the police station at 17th Avenue and Livingston Street, where the Newark Rebellion actually started there. That was ground zero, because the people there were protesting the arrest and beating of John Smith. The police poured out of the police precinct and began beating up the demonstrators. And that's what actually got the whole rebellion of 1967 going. So we want everybody to come out and join us on Monday.
Thank you. And Ed, you want to close this out?
You on mute, Doc.
Well, obviously, I think the first thing I want to say is thank Larry, for coming through at the last minute, man. I appreciate Larry coming through, and I thank God that he's still alive. And with all of that information that he has is tremendous, man. And the fact that he's our brother, right? That he can still roll with us. There's some cats his age that look like they're in their 90s, But Larry, he has a great mind, and I appreciate whenever he come amongst us. And if the world don't appreciate the brother like we think he should, I just want him to know, man, we appreciate every time he come on the show and hang out with us.
Yeah.
Right? And
thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, brother. And of course, we thank everybody who was on the show tonight, John, from the, two professors you had come on and hang out and drop the information that they were dropping. And I think what I would say is that, this whole time period that we're living in is extremely more volatile than we really know that it is, right? Mm-hmm. It really is. I mean, when you think about what's going on with Nicole Hannah Jones and what happened at that university with those white folks, in terms of saying, you got rich folks who can say, from a Republican perspective, we don't want that kind of information being taught to our kids. As I said to Larry, they really just want their kids to be comfortable. But I think that, our job at All Politics Are Local is that we've got to be that drum beat, and we've got to keep beating the drum. And so we've got to go after all those people who can help us get this information out from a Black perspective, from an African perspective, right? And I think that's necessary. And I don't think that we need to be apologetic about it. So I thank those two professors for coming. And yeah, they are brave, John, right? What they were saying, and in terms of talking about the courage that they have to have on them universities that they on, and trying to give the information that they're given. It takes courage. And so I thank all of y'all. You know what I mean? It's always good to see DJ Rhino. I miss being in the studio with my brother. Yes. And hopefully we can get back there. I think the university opens up next week.
It opened up this week, but like 1 day a week, that kind of stuff. So
yeah, because I heard the president say he wanted to start repopulating the university, and so hopefully
hashtag the Delta variant. Hashtag the Delta variant.
I didn't hear you.
I heard
there's a variant of COVID that's out right now that's pretty vicious,
and we need to take it cold serious too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So by the way, I got the sister who's the Chris, Dr. Purnell. I'm trying to get her. I talked to her. She's coming on the show too.
That's awesome. Ed, you're finishing up.
And so want to thank Chris Randall. Appreciate his contribution to the show tonight, and I don't appreciate you always attacking my brother John, and just don't appreciate that, but it's all good. And John, of course, man, I appreciate you, handling the show the way you do. You're doing an awesome job. And of course, Mike, that's in the background, the young brother y'all can't see that do all the camera stuff for us. Appreciate you, Mike, and thank you for rolling with us. And so I'll throw it back to you, John, and just say that if I don't ever tell you, brothers, I'm gonna tell y'all now, I love y'all. Don't misuse my love. I'll be down.
And on that hug, thank y'all, and good night, and next week, and look forward to talking to all of you again.
All right.